regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, today, July 15th, 2019. Item 1 is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is approval of minutes from our July 1st meeting. Have a copy?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
A second. Any discussion?
On page 4 at the top, radio repeater. Probably like to put this on hold and go with another system with just slightly more money. Was it only slightly more? Or was,
No, I think it was a lot more, but slightly more may have been what he said. I have to go back and check.
I think we went
I know
over
Yeah, we went over.
numbers and.
And they were, we could use these funds towards that, but I believe we talked about putting it back through CIP would be the right
Yeah,
thing to do with that accurate, a newer number.
okay, so I don't know if that needs a.
I don't know
Just
that that's.
strike the word slightly and I don't think it.
All right, any other corrections, discussion? All those in favor of the minutes with the words slightly stricken from page 4?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone present to speak? Identify your name and address for the record. Yes, sir. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really bad
Sorry.
time with my hearing tonight. So, a while back in May, you wrote to me and said that you were pausing my approval to connect to the community water system. And I just want to know, what is the status of that?
We have not moved forward yet. We were still seeking information. We were waiting for information to come from both from DPH, I believe.
And do you have any idea when that's gonna occur?
I don't. I had hoped it would have been, from the communication I had, I hoped it would have been a couple of weeks before the holiday, and that didn't happen, so I do not know yet.
Speaking of DPH, they apparently sent you a letter on July 5th asking to meet with you.
Correct.
Did you have that meeting?
We did not.
Is it scheduled?
It is not. It was originally scheduled for Friday the 12th,
Mhm.
and they asked to reschedule, and that has not happened yet.
So that's indefinite also?
There is no date currently. On Thursday, late Thursday, they asked to reschedule, and we just have not agreed on a date as of yet.
When I was talking with DPH and Eastern Highlands, none of them could confirm what you told us on January 9th, that you had been informed that as a Board of Selectmen, you had the authorization to grant this or not grant it. No one will confirm that. I have to say they don't deny it either, they just won't answer it, except Eastern Highlands just wrote to me and said they have no role in the issue of connecting to a public water system. So I take that as a no. So my question is, who told you that? Nobody seems to know.
I spoke with a gentleman named Mike Hage at Department of Public Health.
Okay, can you put that in the minutes, because
I
again,
believe it's in prior minutes. as
I'm
well.
sorry?
It's in prior minutes as well, the conversations that I had.
prior minutes that I have just simply said you talked to those two agencies. You know, I mean, this is clear, we're going nowhere, and this is just being blocked endlessly. So we're gonna go, starting tomorrow, I guess, going to a new stage. So I'm just gonna ask you, John, as an individual and as representative of the town of Willington, do you support the further delay in my connection to the water system?
Well, I don't know if I can speak as a representative of the town. As an individual, I thought you should have had it one way or the other. I thought, as an individual, I thought you should have had it one way or the other quite a long time ago, whether tapping into the system or drilling a well. And I was the one who made a motion to allow you to drill into, or to tap into the system. And that was in January, I believe, or December. I think it was in January. And we passed that, and since then, now I don't have the authority to make it happen. We're supposed to make it happen. So that's where I stand now.
Well, I'm gonna ask the same question to Liza, and between you, you have the authority to make it happen. So I just wanna know, because it's gonna become very important where people stand on this. So I'm just asking you, as an individually and as a selectman, where do you stand on it?
We voted to allow you to move forward in connecting to the water process, as long as the process is completed with the appropriate assurances to the town and to you as the homeowner. We are moving forward as we voted.
That vote was in January, it's July.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna get in the whole thing because the lawyers are gonna be doing that. First of all, you don't even have the authority, but secondly, you know, you're imperiling yourselves in the town and you obviously don't care. But I think the day is coming when you're all gonna be caring about it. So the position of this board is, as of now, I'm still blocked and you're not doing anything about it. We can't even, we don't know anything. Meetings aren't scheduled. We just have this vague thing about things, you know, it said you needed an agreement. I gave you an agreement that's used by over 300,000 people in this state in 56 towns. It's through Connecticut Water, and if you remember, Connecticut Water said, yeah, that's our agreement, but the agreements are dictated by the state. These are just delaying, endlessly delaying snow jobs because Erica is determined to block this. We all know this. So my question to the two of you is, are you going to do anything about it tonight, yes or no? Because after tonight, it's going a different way.
Well, other than telling Erica to do it, which...
I'm sorry, John.
Other than telling Erica to do it, which we did with our vote, what else can we do? Can you do it?
I've been working on a process, John, and I think I've said that before, a process that is something that has to be, it's not something that happens the day we take a vote. I can't turn around tomorrow and he turns on water. There are certain things that need to be in place. So I'll tell you that I have been continuously working on it. And the question posed to you was if you were going to do something about it this evening, so.
Well, yeah, I understand it takes time, but like the gentleman says, we voted that in January and this is July. So to say, well, it takes time, yes, it takes time. And when we have done it, I think one time, Mr. McCoo came in, and was that in April that you were, last time you were here? And
And it's not only on a year.
And that's what,
So,
Well, I'm talking
I'll
about
remind you, this is a present to speak and we are not conducting business at this point. It's not an item on the agenda. So I encourage us to hear Mr. McCoo's comments and then move forward with the agenda of the meeting. If it's something you feel needs to be put on the agenda, that's certainly your prerogative to make a motion to, but otherwise we should move forward with the posted agenda.
I would make a motion that we add, under old business, C, water to 34, Old Farms Road.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good as my word.
All right, is there anyone else present to speak? Okay, moving forward, you'll see a list of correspondence in your packets that are available in the selectman's office. I will mention on status report, the only thing different than the items we were prepared to speak on tonight is the project for a new fuel tank at Public Works, which was approved through CIP. I may actually have approvals to use the steep money that we've been talking about since 2017 that Christina had asked to be made available to us. Cross your fingers, we're making some movement with having someone at OPM respond to us. So that may change from that to be able to include the salt shed potentially. So I'll keep you posted on that. They responded fairly quickly to this last request and we're seeing some forward progress, if 2 years is forward progress. All right, Public Works. Troy? We have an item under Public Works, but if you want to give your update prior to that.
It doesn't matter, we can.
Whichever way.
All right, the other day, I sent everybody to a chainsaw and after the storm cleanup in Putnam. We fixed Turnpike Extension and gravel road. We fixed the catch basin on Laurel Drive. We mowed where we'll be chip sealing. Chip sealing will be taking place within the next couple of weeks, beginning of August, last week of July. We dug out some retention ponds, worked on some quotes with a new fuel tank and the salt shed. And that should be pretty much it. Tomorrow we're going to be doing overlay on a portion of Potter School Road. So about 1,000 feet over there will be overlaying. And that's about it.
And then I will mention that Troy has received a quote on a trade-in of the not working roadside mower to offset the cost of the new mower. So we're now down from $154,000 amount that we originally budgeted for to $116,913. So we hope when Donna returns to vacation next week, we should be ready to go out to bid for a bid for leasing on that. So we'll be able to move forward with that. So again, that's an additional $7,500 off the quote that Troy received. So kudos to you. All right, so if you recall, we've had several requests from different residents to help with speeding concerns. Our issues have always been that we don't have our own police force and that Troop C will help us when they can. I think we can agree that's been less than what we'd like to see. And continue to ask them to monitor those particular areas. So we did put in a new budget line item, $10,000, and we named it traffic control. So Troy's looked at some radar signs. You should each have a copy of at least one in your packet that Troy shared with us. The other that I shared with Troy is the first one we had looked at. We've gotten some mailings on. So Troy, if you want to touch on these.
Yeah, basically it's like a 30-inch sign. It runs off a battery or solar. The gentleman I spoke with, he said use battery. It lasts about 2 weeks and you can recharge the battery. Solar, if it's going to stay in one stationary spot, then you would say that. But through this, it goes on a bracket. We can put it on a telephone pole or any pole even we put in the ground, so it can be moved around. It records the information, so if it stays there for 2 weeks, we can take that and say, okay, we have a lot of speeding, we don't, and we can move it around wherever there's a citizen complaining on speeding, basically.
So the last page is the quote for them. So the $29.50 is the sign with batteries, or $32.50 for a solar panel. The Bluetooth data package, is that per unit?
Yes, per unit.
Okay. And then the bracket is separate.
Yeah, you would sell a couple different brackets. So if we had, you know, yeah. We could put them up or we leave them up, it doesn't matter. So if there was a couple spots that we knew that we wanted to put the sign there for 2 weeks, we could leave a bracket, put it somewhere else, or take the bracket down, or take the pole that it's on.
So it looks like we could probably get two out of that $10,000, two of the battery operated, if my quick math. is good. Would you, some of the other things we talked about or had been suggested by residents were speed bumps? Can you talk to that? We
I don't
did
think
say we would
that's-
wait until we had a public works director to touch on that.
Speed bumps are meant for like going to like a campground or somewhere, but not meant to be put on the road. Yeah, they can be put in temporarily, but it's still, they cause a hazard, because if somebody comes flying down the road, doesn't realize they're there, at 30, 40 miles an hour, you're gonna do damage to a car.
Isn't that a good thing though, since they shouldn't be speeding anyway?
Well, yeah, but then it comes into the point of now there's an obstruction in the road, and now the town's
Even if you
liable.
post that there is a speed bump?
It's, yeah.
It's also a major impediment to
I
public
was just
safety.
gonna say, with the rural firefighter.
We occasionally have to go out Cedar Swamp Road in Mansfield, and there's bump after bump after bump out there, and it really slows us down, and it slows Mansfield coming in to help us out in Yukon. So from public safety, I understand people are concerned about the speed, but the speed bumps are not good for us.
Specifically for Cesar Road though, if you went 320 to Penny Hill, wouldn't you get to that same area in the same amount of time if you just skipped the cut through?
Not necessarily, but we have to look at this as an overall picture, not necessarily one road and what we would and wouldn't do in just one area. I think we talked about our concern with, because we don't have curbs on most of our roads or any real shoulder, would people then drive around them and then be driving onto front yards of our homeowners? That's certainly something to think about. To avoid them, people would then go around them.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry.
You can just identify yourself in the record.
Sabrina Wentworth, 69 Cesar Road. With the data that you collect from these speed limit signs, what is the plan for the data that's collected?
Well, then we could call and contact the troop, and they could sit there saying this time, there's time where it's time monitored and how fast. So then we could set that up saying, we have a complaint every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, somebody comes flying through there, these are the times to sit. And we could say, oh, they're speeding, yeah, now here we can show them that the data is here to say there are people speeding and we're not making this up. We have proof now that there is data.
And this is different than data that we've collected using the speed monitor from the town of Ashford or wherever
Well,
else that you
it would be similar data. The data we collected last time showed there wasn't a speeding problem. That there were a handful of outliers, which is typical, that's not atypical of putting these speed monitors in. The idea is that maybe they would help to get people to slow down. I think that's what we thought. We weren't going to be able to stop speeding. But if we could get them to see that they were there and that someone was watching their speed, that maybe then they would slow down, and that's the idea. If the data shows that there's a problem, then we can certainly reach out to Troop C and ask them to go to these specific areas, but that hasn't happened before. It's not to say that it won't again, but the last data we collected did show that there wasn't a speeding problem, which I think they did what they meant to do and that they slowed people down. The idea of not putting something in place that stays is that then we could move it to areas where they're troubled, where someone doesn't get used to it, knows it's there, and knows and believes it's not.
So we've had 3 head-on collisions on our road in the past 18 months. The most recent one was the week before last, when a 16-year-old girl came off 320 flying down the road, didn't stop at the stop sign, and ended up in someone's tree, hit the tree head-on. Fortunately, her airbags deployed and she wasn't injured, but this is the 3rd accident in 18 months, so there is very clearly a problem with speeding specifically on my road. I know throughout town, but specifically on my road. So I'm just wondering, if my kids were out there riding bikes, or we were walking the dog, and that happened to happen while we were there, someone could have been killed. And I appreciate that the town has put money into the budget, and I do appreciate some type of apparatus that will monitor the speeding. I need confidence that once we have that in place, that there will be a diligent effort to get on Troop C to really monitor what's happening on our roads before someone gets killed.
So I hope that you've seen that where we've gone with this is that that's our intent. There's been repeated requests from them to pay attention to these areas. I just met with the new lieutenant, the commander at Troop C, and reiterated the same concerns that we've heard from our residents, that if we had a police force to go out, we would put them in the areas that we're hearing from our residents, but we do not, and we can continuously request from them that they do. If we have data that shows They have assured me, for what it's worth, that they would go out, and I have to believe them, that they would. So our intent is to use the data we collect from these to help mitigate the speeding in these areas, and I'm hoping that by not leaving something all the time, that, I think the mobile aspect of it will help.
Thank you.
So,
I'd also like to, so I printed out a couple of pictures that I would like Troy to take a look at and see if he can accomplish some of that. So
is that artwork?
it's visual speed bumps.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yeah, and I've brought that to these meetings before, but they are, I was reading articles today, they are just as effective as all of these other visual means, and they're much less expensive because you just need paint and somebody to apply it. So if we can maybe look into getting some of the visual speed bumps, especially by the entrance to the apartment, anytime there's a stop sign. The pyramid one, I think that's like the middle picture, it's on John's page, that one is particularly effective because it does look like there's an obstruction, so people
It sure does.
will slow down until they sort of figure out what's happening. And again, I know, Sabrina, we've talked about this before, that's part of the challenge is that the only thing that's long-term effective is consistent enforcement. And that all of these measures will reduce to a certain percentage, to a certain degree. Obviously will not eradicate the speeding issue, but that doing a combination of all of these things that hopefully are fairly cost effective will make an overall impact in speeding.
And if this stays in the budget, this is 1 year, so this might be what we spend this year, and there might be more dollars for future years. So I'll share these with, do you want a copy, a separate copy?
No, this is the same company.
So the flyer that I just handed you, I manage communities, planned unit communities and condo associations, and this is one of the items that they've used to deter speeding on their roads. I know it's different for public and private roads, but this actually takes a picture of the license plate and monitors the
Just on
speed.
camera.
And I just don't know if that's something that the town would consider, even just investigating.
I think
We
it's
can,
worth looking at
it's
it.
worth investigating.
It's the same company that Troy printed out the signs from, so.
And I think Troy really wanted to say, here's what I've looked at, and what direction does, this, what he had said to me was he wanted to know what direction we want him to go forward with. So before we purchase something, if we wanted to look at this versus, a speed camera, we'd have to look at this because I'm not sure if that's something that can be moved to multiple areas, and that's what we want. We don't have just one road that's a problem. Speeding is sadly a widespread issue. So we'll take a look at, I'll share these with Troy, and we can take a look at them and their costs, or if we can spread these out over the course of a couple of budgets and see where we go with them. But our plan is to continue to move forward. We did say once we got onto the budget, and we did say once we had a public works director, and we have both of those things. So that's the direction that we are going.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a goodie packet. All right, anything else, Troy?
No, that's,
Okay. So new business. We received a communication on June 30th from Jim Bulick, the chair of the Republican Town Committee, asking the Board of Selectmen to adopt a resolution in opposition of tolls in Willington. They proposed specific language to such, and it was read into the minutes at our last meeting. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity. Since that July 3rd meeting, I received one communication from a resident, I believe you all have a copy of that, who asked, as a resident and registered voter, to voice their opposition to the proposal, and reasons being, as a citizen of we the citizens of Connecticut pay for the maintenance of our roads, while truck and cars drive from New York and Massachusetts can pass throughout without buying gas and never paying a penny towards our road maintenance. All the other states are smart and have me pay towards their road maintenance. Number two, when driving on interstates with tolls or roads next to them, I never notice cars or trucks avoiding them and going on secondary roads. It is much too slow. It is unlikely we would have a negative effect on our local roads. Please provide evidence from other states. Number three, I also do not want to pay more taxes, but our roads are often in terrible shape and damage our cars. So if this money helps road maintenance, and I have fewer repairs, I am for the tolls. Signed, George Graff.
If I could, if you want me to read the whole thing, I will, but I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen adopt the following resolution. A resolution from the Town of Willington Board of Selectmen in opposition to the installation of tolls on local and state roads. Whereas the select persons believe the increased traffic on our secondary roads would affect the rural quality of life in Willington residents in numerous ways, including but not limited to: 1, a dramatic increase of heavy-duty commercial vehicles and tractor-trailer truck traffic encroaching on our scenic community, negatively impacting the town's character and charm. 2, a dramatic increase of heavy-duty commercial vehicles and tractor-trailer truck traffic subjecting roads to increased damage, maintenance, and repair costs, resulting in an increased tax burden. 3, crowding of secondary roads, an increase in traffic accidents, and disruption of the pedestrian enjoyment on and adjacent to the main roads affected. 4, traffic congestion from increased vehicles and accidents, delaying response time for local emergency services personnel, causing significant safety concerns and compromising the standard of safety to the residents of the town of Willington. 5, further discouraging local business and retail establishments, increasing costs and decreasing convenience to residents. 6, the subjection of our residents to a new estimated tax of $700 to $900 per year for commuters traveling from Willington to Hartford for work per commuter. The regressive nature of the proposal failing to take into account the income level of the working residents. Now therefore be it resolved that the Willington Board of Selectmen does hereby declare its opposition to the implementation of tolls on state highways leading to the aforementioned negative effects of the town of Willington, and be it further resolved that the Willington Board of Selectmen does hereby submit this resolution to the Governor of the State of Connecticut and to the Connecticut State Legislature this 15th day of July 2019.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
Jim, did you make a speech?
Yeah, Jim Bulick, Laurel Drive. I submitted this at your last meeting, and then I had to run off to another meeting. I apologize for that. Willington, it wouldn't be unique in adopting this type of resolution. I've gone online to NoTollsConnecticut.org. It's a nonpartisan group, and there's about 18 other towns that have passed a similar resolution saying, look, we are a bedroom community, you know, there's a bunch of issues that we haven't considered when we pass tolls, and we want to just get that out there. This is another point of view that we haven't heard espoused by the state. We are a rural community. We value that rural community. And then, you know, it's bad enough I have to, when I ride to Providence, I'm behind. It seems like I'm behind every truck going to Providence. But I've also worked in Worcester for a number of years. There's another road that parallels the Mass Pike. That's Route 20. It's very heavily traveled by trucks and people avoiding the tolls. It's just a fact. And then I would say the tolls on the Mass Pike are rather inexpensive compared to the 4 cents per mile that's being proposed here. So what's being proposed is not unique. There's 18 other towns who have done that, Enfield being one of them. And I thank you for your consideration.
Pete Tanaka, 125 Mason Road. I'd like you to stand in favor of this resolution. I had a chance to meet with the Governor's Chief of Staff on this. It seems like it would be a good idea it's hard to disagree with something that's a moving target. They're continuously changing their program to see who they can bring into their fold. But it looks like a majority of he told me that all the money from the tolls would be going to fix the interstates alone. That's all the road tolls are for, is the interstates alone. He said it was going to be a double lockbox controlled by the federal government, which the first selectman of Marlborough said sounded to him like Dean Wormer saying double secret probation. What does it really mean? So I I think that a majority of the tolls are gonna use are to fix stuff down the western part of the state, and it's gonna cost us money to fix at the western part of the state.
Thank you. I did have the opportunity to twice sit through a presentation on what tolls would be, and that is exactly the opposite of the presentation by the DOT, is that the proposed tolls are on 4 highways, 84, which goes right through Willington being one of them. The money collected on each highway can only be used on those highways first, and then on those secondary roads, state roads, off of those highways second. So those tolls collected on I-95 would be used on I-95. Those tolls collected on I-84 would be used first on 84 and second. I also believe if traffic were to be pushed off, it would be pushed onto either Route 74 or Route 32, which are state roads, and then funding would be used for those. So that was part of the presentation given by DOT, specifically regarding tolls, which I'm a little disappointed to think that you would have heard from someone in the governor's office something opposite of that.
It was very much that it's primarily for those roads, but then they've also.
And those are federal guidelines.
Right,
They
federal
have to use
guidelines.
on those roads
But
first.
the governor's office has also said this is to promote his 30-30-30 plan, the 30 minutes from Hartford to, I believe, Fairfield, and 30 minutes from Fairfield to New York City, and that they're already collecting enough taxes for this that are designated for roads, but they're deferring those to other projects to balance the budget. And I asked that if they collected the money for roads and spent it on roads, they'd have what they need. I don't.
So I think,
One more thing, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
go for it.
I think that, like Jim said, 18 other towns have adopted similar resolutions. I think that in this town, it's maybe even more important to adopt this resolution, as our state representative has not yet said which side of the issue she falls on, and I think that it would be very important for us to influence her to vote for the taxpayer.
So I have 2 thoughts. One, so if there's a need for funding, right, for the roads, to fix the roads, we are paying for it regardless of how we pay for it, right? It's either gonna be the tolls or it's gonna be increases in taxes. So the theory behind the tolls is that it spreads it out amongst more people who are traveling through the state of Connecticut. The theory behind just doing taxes is that it just impacts Connecticut residents solely. With that argument, I have a hard time saying, no, I would rather you increase my state taxes than to charge 4 cents per mile for everybody that's driving on our highways. So on that, I have a disagreement in terms of whether this is a better option or increasing our state taxes is a better option, right? And then my second concern is, this isn't our decision to make. And I think it's hard for the Board of Selectmen to sort of make a resolution that is supposed to be representing the entire town when I think, A, this isn't our decision to make, and B, I don't think we have a consensus on the entire town about what the appropriate answer would be to this specific resolution. So I don't know that I would be able, I can tell you what I think, what I personally believe. I don't know that that's something that's shared widely for the town. And given that this actually isn't our decision to make, it's an exercise in futility, for one. The decision will be made regardless of what we say. And isn't that up to our political engagement with our state representative? If you have strong feelings about tolls, to connect with the state representative who actually makes that decision.
And I
I
think
would
what
say
they're asking
yes,
us,
and this is the way we
they're
would
asking us to
connect
do
with
that as a town.
that
Understood.
person.
And then going back to the initial statement,
And
I don't know that I
have
feel
been there
confident saying,
town
yes, the
meetings.
3 of us will make a decision and represent every single person's interest in the town when this is an issue that there are very clear multiple scenarios and not our decision to make. So mean, that's my personal opinion.
But we do know, we have a lot of, this is a bedroom community, and there's a lot of commuters. So we know that
Yeah.
this will have a huge financial impact on the commuters in Wilmington.
If it's needed, if that money is needed, it's gonna have a huge financial impact on us.
But we
anyway.
are also trying to bring in new business and economic development here, right? So, and frankly speaking, Wellington's gonna attract highway-type businesses, or just outside of Yukon type businesses, so.
Well,
So your argument that people would come onto our secondary roads actually goes against that argument, because then they would be pushed off to some of those businesses, so there could be.
Well, I'm
If there's
thinking-
increased
I'm
traffic.
thinking
If there's
another
increased
warehouse
traffic.
similar to FedEx or something, like if they wanted to set up, there was no incentive to come here if we're heavily tolled. They would pick some other spot to go.
And that, I will tell you that as part of the presentation, the number that is being used is that 40% of the revenue would come from out-of-state traffic. I would like to hear it be a little bit higher number, but I think 40% is a realistic number. That's 40% of the infrastructure for roads cost that would not come out of the pocket of every resident in Connecticut, as a counterpoint. Yes, sir, in the back?
Carl Pearson, 55 Fermier Road. The statement was made, I believe you made it from information you got from DOT, that the money, the tolls on 84 were going to be spent on 84, 395, 95, 91, spending on those roads.
Not 395 is not included, that is not one of the proposed roads.
Okay. Route 84 also goes through Danbury to Waterbury. So that's where the bulk of the money's going to be spent, in my opinion.
So, see in the back? Yes.
Christine Southwest, Jared Sparks Road. I am not, I want to say, I'm not in favor, I'm not opposed as well. I absolutely hated that original proposal from the state to put tolls on all of the interstates and the Merritt Parkway. That was ridiculous. To book pantries every 6 miles, no. I'd like to keep an open mind. I want to wait to see what the state is going to come up with. I travel a lot to Worcester. There are a number of different ways that I go. Mass Pike, Route 20, Route 49, Route 9. On those back roads, the secondary roads, I don't see a lot of trucks trying to avoid the Mass Pike. I see a lot of people trying to avoid the Mass Pike just because of the amount of vehicles are on the Mass Pike. I came back from Worcester on Sunday, and Route 20 going eastbound was bumper to bumper. I don't believe that that's from the tolls. I have talked with our representative several times and told her my opposition. I'm waiting to hear. I want to keep an open mind. And as Liza just said, you folks, I would like you not to pass this resolution. You will be speaking for the entire town of Wilmington, 6,000 residents. You have only heard from a few. Thank you.
Okay. Yes,
Ditto.
sir. Like, ditto.
Bob Bushinsky, McRoad. You talked about trucks. Trucks going up Village Hill to Stafford Springs to get out of the tolls and stuff, to go around different places. The trucks go on main roads and they deliver 99% of your products that you have in your house today. For what reason? 32, 74 are state roads, they're not town roads. How many trucks do you see going up and down town roads? Trailer trucks every day. Very few. And if they aren't, they're making a delivery. Where did they come up with all this information about this resolution? What percentage? Who come up with this? 1 individual, 2 individuals, or 3 individuals? I'm for tolls. We need the money. Now, I've been out of the state this last couple of months, and every state I've been into, through New England, I paid tolls everywhere. Because we had tolls years ago, because of one person got killed, and they said, oh, we're gonna kill everybody in the toll booths. And how many they killed? 1. So what they do, took the tolls off. Now we're trying to get them back. We need to get them back to help support our roads, not to take away from our roads. And this resolution, as far as I'm concerned, is not gonna help the town of Wellington whatsoever. Thank you.
I took a,
Just identify your
Oh, I'm
name and
sorry.
address for the record.
Jeremy Chartier from 12 Mason Road. I took a vacation a couple weeks ago. I was fortunate enough to head down to Pennsylvania. And I went down the main highways per Google, and it was around, 15, 16 bucks, whatever, to get down there. And it wasn't a fun foray either, because those toll roads, a lot of them are all messed up, and I don't foresee our state doing any better than them down in New Jersey and New York. As again, this is my personal opinion. After I got to my destination and the meet was over, I pointedly told Google to take me anywhere but a toll road. And me and about 4,000 other Mustang owners proceeded to drive through back roads, quite entertainingly, but nonetheless we drove through back roads. We impacted, I suppose, the local towns in Pennsylvania going north and up, or at least me up towards Connecticut. That's my personal experience. It's not necessarily opinion, but I can say that tolls do affect the flow of traffic. That'll test it.
So I will say, at the last meeting, we had just received this the evening before in an email. It was asked to be added to the agenda, and at that time I opposed it simply because I thought it was important that our residents see something this important, that we were taking a stand on, essentially on their behalf. And in that time frame, I heard from, and prior to that, as far as tolls go in the selectman's office, I heard from one resident, and I read you that comment. I have not heard an overwhelming argument for or against from our residents. I'm sure everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion on tolls, and everyone has an opinion on what they do and don't want to have to pay. I don't doubt that. It just has not been shared at the town level. And I think I have a hard time making a resolution on behalf of our residents with lack of understanding of what it is that they really are asking for. I will say, someone said they'd spoken to our rep. She was very honest at her office hours here in Wellington. Was that last week? Peter and John were there with myself. I think Steph was there, and she did not. She is on the fence about them, and certainly how we feel. I believe she would represent us in the way we want. I'm just not sure it is our place to speak on behalf of all of our residents on this particular issue.
And I would say especially not in a resolution that actually does nothing, because
Right.
I think we would probably be better served as a town if this is a conversation that we want to have and impact the decision-making statewide. We would be better served holding a forum with open conversation with the state legislators who make this decision than to pass a resolution that is essentially meaningless to the state of Connecticut. I think we would be much better having some sort of personal engagement opportunity with those who make the decision, for opportunity for conversation, discussion, question, answer.
And the selectman, like, it could set up a public hearing with our representatives and for an opportunity for our residents to come out to speak directly to them. I think it's important that we be heard, that everybody be heard, and especially if we think they haven't made a decision. If they're still riding on the fence, I'm not sure when this is going to go or if this will go to a special session. There's discussion about that, but there's nothing, I still have heard nothing new. Have you heard anything to the contrary? No. That might be a way to go to give people the opportunity for them to hear directly from us and directly what individual concerns are. Some of the items in this resolution I disagree with, specifically the increased heavy-duty commercial on our, impacting our roads. I think we see that already with trucks, heavy truck traffic on 32 and 74. And for our community, I think it would remain the same. So And John, you have anything else you want to?
Oh, yeah, couple of things here. Number one, I want to address the lockbox issue. Once upon a time, there was a lockbox where any money that came in from gasoline taxes went to the roads. Good. And then there was, well, they needed that money for something else, but there was a sales tax. When you sold the car, you paid the sales tax. That sales tax is gonna go to the roads. Well, that was up until just recently when the state apparently decided, well, we're gonna have these tolls, so that's gonna pay for the roads, so we can take this money out of the lockbox and put it to the general fund. So when we say that we're told that all this money raised by the tolls, this time you can trust us.
To be fair, John, they did not take the money out of the lockbox. They diverted it before it got to the lockbox, so they wouldn't have to take it out of the lockbox. It's semantics, but it's important. Just ask the senator from Lyme or wherever she's from.
So, anyway, so as far as the lockbox goes, I'm not so sure that all the money is going to end up going where we hope it would go. Number two, this is a truly regressive tax. The people, now there may be somebody in town who's a billionaire and he's gonna ride these roads and not care about it. But there's quite a lot of people in town who are employed in Hartford, West Hartford. I know somebody who drives to New Haven every day. And these tolls, well, we're told that they're not gonna be any, only a couple cents, you know. That has a tendency to rise as time goes on. And I think this is going to be a heavy tax. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know where he got $700 to $900 per year, but a friend of mine figures he's at about $600 per year, and he's in East Hartford. So, so I'm not sure that we want to be hitting our people up for this. As far as the Board of Selectmen speaking for the town, we do that all the time. That's why we were elected. And if we speak for the town doesn't like us, well, we won't be re-elected. But there are 18 other towns that have passed resolutions similar to this. And all this does, like you say, nobody is going to react to this. Oh, Willington said we gotta do it. But what it will do is keep them from saying, the state of Connecticut demanded that we put these tolls on. And you know, every time you start talking about a tax in retrogression, it's all, yeah, well, the people of Connecticut voted for that tax. So let's at least not take that away from them. And we can do that by passing this resolution. Again, it's a letter to the governor and a letter to the legislature that says it is the feeling of the town of Willington, and I think it is the feeling of the majority of the people in the town of Willington, that that these tolls are a bad idea. And if you want to increase taxes for the roads, well, then increase taxes. We'll fight that too, because we won't believe you're going to use the money for that either, but that'll be a different fight. So, with that.
Is that a hand wave over there?
It was.
Okay.
Well,
Your fan
Ralph.
went off. I didn't even know you were there, Ralph.
Ralph Tillis, 47 Village Hill Road, on this toll issue, as far as the resolution, you know, quite frankly, I don't think it's going to make a damn bit of difference. But what I have a problem with this whole toll proposition is who establishes the rates once this does get enacted. It's out of the hands of the legislature. I hope everyone realizes that. There are enough appointed members of this toll commission to overrule any elected official. There is no one who has to answer to the voters as to what happens with tolls. It's that commission. Not only that, they're going to get to raise the rates. And if they're not getting enough money, well, maybe we're going to put tolls on Route 2.
Well, maybe we're gonna add tolls to, what, 395? Maybe 291, because we're not getting enough money. This is my fear. You know, I really don't care whether they put tolls up, but as far as a resolution for Willington is concerned, where the hell are they gonna go to avoid 84 through Willington? There is no direct local road, you know? So that part of it, I think, is kind of silly. But it's the principle of who's gonna manage the toll rates that troubles me. Because it will be out of the hands of the legislature. They will not be voting on increases in tolls. It will be a commission. Now, the members of the legislature that are gonna be sitting on that commission can be overruled by those who were not elected. Look at the makeup. I have. That's what scares me about it. So, do what you want, you know? I have no objections either way, whether you pass this resolution or you don't pass this resolution. But I do have a problem with the way this is structured from a state perspective.
Thank you. Liza, you want to say something and then?
I guess it's just, again, a repeat
Okay.
of what I was gonna say before, in that this is a fabulous conversation to be having with your state representatives. There's nothing that the Board of Selectmen can say or do to really impact this issue in a way that is more significant than you as voters contacting your state representatives and telling them this directly. I think it is far more impactful for them to get 15, 20 different phone calls from residents of Willington rather than one resolution that is essentially, we know, a dummy piece of paper that does nothing. So to be flat honest, if you mobilized 20, 15, 20 callers, it's going to be more impactful than this. I don't see the need to continue a resolution that's essentially useless.
I am in favor of the resolution, only because
State your
it's
name for the record.
Gerard Chartier, 12 Mason Road. Only because I think it's just one of many steps that we can take to keep the camel's nose out of the tent.
Yes, Mr. Pearson?
Another thing that I've thought of is a privacy issue. You're gonna be photographing license plates. They're gonna have a massive database of information. Basically, who travels when and where. What are they gonna do with that information? They're gonna sell it. The state will take money any way they can get it. Someone is gonna offer them money for that, and then they're gonna come down and say, well, you're driving too much. You can't drive that much. That's the end game.
All right, so there's, John, anything else?
Can we call?
You can call them. Yes. The motion on the floor is to adopt the resolution as read by John. See no more discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Again, I stated before, and I'll say it again, I'm willing to reach out to our representative and see if we can't set up a public hearing or community time for them to come out and hear our voices. And then I think Liza suggested that you reach out, anyone reach out to them, and that has impact as well. If through some of that we find there's a need for something else, then I think we can take action then. All right, the next item was discussion. Just for discussion, we received a request for, is it in your packet? Okay, oh, there it is. For a policy on educational funding for town employees.
What about the drink, the
Did I skip one? Oh, I apologize.
Culvert
I
drainage,
thought-
flooding?
I had them reversed. Look, just like that. Okay, so the item B is culvert drainage flooding issue at 130 Turnpike Road. You have in your packets a request from Jacob and Brittany Kowalshan stating their concerns, and I'll let Mr. Kowalshan speak to his issue. Now, I hope you both had an opportunity to take a look at the information.
I got some pictures if you wanted to.
We did print them out for all of them to have, so thank you for sharing that. They were most helpful. Okay.
All right, so my name's Jake Walshin. We live at 130 Turnpike Road. And this spring, we bought the house last year. And this spring, for about 2 full months, our front yard was flooded. And we had a nice little river blowing down the whole side of our property. due to a culvert that comes under the road that is, I guess, 16 inch that we thought originally is actually in the plans an 18-inch culvert that goes into a 4-inch pipe. Mathematically speaking, it doesn't work, and all the leaves that come down from the road that I clean in the fall, well, I clean my leaves anyways, all the leaves that are there continue to come down and block the pipe, and as such, I get a river for about 2 months this year. So I know this year's a little bit wetter than normal, I get that. That being said, a couple days ago when we had that flash flood, that quick little storm that came through, it flooded again. It rained quickly, but it flooded again. So our concerns are, we brought up once already and we were told it's not a town problem / funding is an issue and all that kind of good stuff. So our concerns are just a couple of different things. First and foremost, contamination. This is road runoff from several hundred feet of roads. It comes all the way down the street and then crosses over both in the field next to us and onto our property. My well, it's a shallow well, our well, shallow well, on that same side of the house, and that water is flowing on top of the yard and flowing into the ground right there. So that's a major concern for us. On top of that, it's also a 6 to 8 inch pond of 1.5 to 2 foot deep water. So if somebody, God forbid, happens to fall in that and drowns, who's liable for that? I didn't create that. So I'm looking for the town to do something to help resolve this because it's not going anywhere. I got a river in my front yard and I've already been told no, so I'm trying to bring it to the next step before we go any further.
So I did, I spoke with Troy and then met with Carl to help understand how we got to here. You can stand if you want. It's up to you. To understand how we got here, especially in light of the fact that in 2016, this road was repaved and some drainage was redone, so that I wanted to know, was it caused from that? Did we, what happened in that phase to see where we got to today? So you should have in your packet a map here of the drainage. Carl, would you mind speaking to that?
Sure.
Drainage, so there was Turnpike Road, we received a steep grant to do drainage and repave this road prior to Jacob and Brittany purchasing the property, and this specific piece already existed, but there was some work done on the opposite side of the road, correct?
Well, as we looked at the maps, this up until now, in the reconstruction and prior to the reconstruction, there was no indication that there had been any issues here. What we showed on the plans was for the line to be cleaned out and for a paved swale to replace an erosion area directly adjacent to the inlet to the pipe. So that's the reason for the paved swale. It's not that it changed or added anything. It was an area that was eroding and producing some issues with the erosion, filling in portions of the cross-culvert pipe. And there again, as I said, we had no indication prior to doing this work that there had been any problems on the lot. And so it's a bit of a something new, that came up here that now that we're having issues.
Jacob, can I ask, this is an unusual year with water. I think we
Correct.
can all agree with that.
Absolutely.
There is still, certainly we can see from your photos and your description, a lot of water onto your property. Prior to that, so I know you only purchased the house last year, did you notice as much water or did it seem to be draining?
No, it drained pretty well. It wasn't until obviously the spring you get more runoff. I get that, you get snow melt, and I understand that. But 2 months of a pond in my front yard and a river, I couldn't mow my lawn for a good 2.5 months in the front. So it's a lot of water, and so there were multiple swales. So there's just not just one, but there's like 3 or 4 up the road that all divert water into that, which then runs down the side of the road, runs under our neighbor's driveway, then runs under the road onto our property. So I get that there's erosion things and preventing erosion, but you're also allowing water to flow more freely off the road into the drain onto the property. And not a ton, but just a little bit more. And the fact that it's not draining appropriately is now adding oil, anything from cars driving by, anything from plows dropping on the road, anything that's on that road that's not draining properly way out back and then flowing all the way down is now going onto my property into our yard and sinking into the ground and going into my shallow well and into my drinking water.
Have you had that tested?
I had it tested prior to moving in, and another 6 months later, I'm going to keep testing it to keep monitoring the level, because I
Have
don't
you,
want that.
so at this point, I know you were concerned that there could be contamination. Have you seen any?
Nothing abnormal other than low pH, so even though that it has gone down since I've lived there, I'm not sure if that's air pollution or not, but other than that, nothing as of yet. But I am monitoring it, I have multiple water samples from the past 6 months.
So the solution you're requesting is that the town install an underground 18-inch pipe, so.
Or at least correspond something.
Right,
something to
so
at least-
there's an 18-inch pipe there going into a 4-inch pipe. And the estimates that Carl has given are somewhere in the nature of $30,000 to $40,000 to replace the pipe that is existing. So it's certainly not a simple solution, which then would require still a collection of water, a bait.
It would require a structure where the outlet of the pipe currently sits,
Okay.
and then from that point, there would probably be a catch basin and or a manhole, then a new pipe going out to the back, a flared end, and a plunge pool to avoid any erosion at the back.
Can you explain to us what a plunge pool is for those that don't know?
It's a small pool at the discharge point of a pipe that prevents scour and erosion of the soil just where you're coming out, because the discharge velocity coming out of a pipe is typically quite high, especially with the slope that's on this piece of property. So what you want to do is you want to kind of kill that velocity and allow the larger particles to settle out to the extent that they can.
So would that plunge pool be in the area where Mr. Kowalski is concerned now?
No, it would be, obviously, we take it to the back of the property, and that's what, where the cost would come in, is the fact that, you're carrying it. I don't know exactly what the distance is, but we've had similar situations where the cost has been in that same range.
Is there any, maybe this is a Trey question, so is there any, while all of this stuff is getting sorted out in terms of what any possible solutions could be, is there any way to help with, I'm sorry, I don't remember your first name, Jacob? You were saying there's like leaves that are bunching up. Is there any way to help with that in terms of like screening? To help keep that, the 4-inch pipe open anyway, so that it can limit some of that,
I mean, we can dig that area out, but I think that 4-inch pipe has seen its life expectancy. There's trees along there. It's an old orange bird pipe, so it's not like plastic. So I mean, I think there's roots and stuff in there. I think if that pipe was open, it would help, alleviate some of the issue. Won't take the whole 18 inches of water, but obviously it did work there before, and there's, now that the pipe is either clogged or where's water's going over.
So do we have the technology to investigate that and unclog if that's the problem?
I can take a look at it.
Could it be that simple,
It
or?
could be that simple, yes. I did meet Jake over there one time, and the water was running out of the pipe, like a quarter of the pipe. So whether it wasn't a full pipe, so there is flow through there, but there could be roots. There's a whole row of trees in there, so most likely it's full of roots. Even a snake's not gonna go in there.
Carl, did you tell me that when they redid the road, they cleaned out that pipe?
We did not clean out the 4-inch pipe, we cleaned out the larger pipe, crossing the road, plus the little pool area that's there. And one thing that I just wanted to mention too is that if you were to go the route of putting in a new pipe to get to the back of the property, you would need a right-of-way through the property so that it could be, the pipe could be maintained and the plunge pool could be maintained in the future.
Which is fine, I would have no problem putting an easement on the property to have access to that.
And that would have to be wide enough for
So
machinery to
my next
get.
question, and how close to that? I know your concern is the water into your well. How far is that? Look, all
The
these
well is
pictures are hard to tell.
probably 40 to 50 feet from property line, that way towards the neighbor's property. So we would probably, maybe a little bit more than that. Might be like 40, 50 feet. I'm not sure how much space you would need width-wise easement.
That's fine.
Correct, yes, that one, yes. I remember which number that was, but sorry.
Typically, we need to have enough room for a piece of machinery to get through with a little buffer on each side. And what we like to get is about 25 feet.
Yeah, so there'd be plenty of room for that, there's plenty of room for that.
So Carl, you would run this to the edge of his property?
Well, hopefully before the edge, because otherwise it would involve somebody else's
Somebody else's
property.
My first question is going to be, what's going to happen beyond that? Is there
Right, and we haven't investigated exactly how far we would have to go, but we took a look at what's in the back. And in the back of the property, what happens is that it joins streams from the adjacent property and then comes back on to Turnpike Road, probably about 500-600 feet west of where this house is located.
It comes out, it's literally at the points of our property. So it comes on at the beginning of our property and exits at the end of our property.
So I have a question, is this for point of discussion, or is there any decision that we need to make
Well, so
on this?
it's point of discussion, and simply at this point, we need to decide what forward direction we want to move in, because we're not at the point where we can say, yes, we have $30,000 or $40,000 to spend for an adequate solution. So it would be irresponsible of us tonight to say, yes, we can fix it, and we'll give you what you're asking for because it meets all the requirements. So what I don't know is a short-term solution. I do know that as far as I can find, I'm not at all diminishing the concern you're having now, because this is a lot of water, we can see it. And this is a historic year for water, that's for sure. That we haven't had any recorded concerns about the water in that area since the road was redone and prior to that. It doesn't mean that they weren't concerned about it, it just means that we don't know anything about it.
She was like a little 9-year-old lady.
Right. So, but, I tried to ask all those questions. Did we know this was a problem? We did Turnpike Road. We cleaned out the pipe, and so did we create better flow, so now the water is really moving through there? Yes, that's probably a little bit of a possibility, but we have more water this year than we know what to do with. Maybe some more fire department drills with some water, you guys think somewhere. So I'd love to say that we have a simple answer for you right now. We don't. Spending certainly this kind of money from the town takes more than just the three of us. And that we should have some further discussions on what that would look like. Again, I did meet with Troy and Carl today to explain the entire situation to me and what it would cost and what it would look like to move forward with a pipe, as long as we're not pushing the problem off of one piece of property onto another. That's what we want to try to avoid.
And it would all stay on my property.
You get all of it, beginning to end.
You get all of it. It's just,
And I certainly don't want to see any contamination to any kind of groundwater, so that's, I'm glad that you're having it tested and that so far nothing has shown. But what we can do going forward, I'm not sure, but I'm not willing to say we'll do something, but I'm not willing to say we're not going to do anything, that we'll take a look at it and see. So we'll have some more discussions and see if we can take a look at a realistic plan to then present and communicate with you as well, Brittany, on what we hope to do. And that if the two of you have input, suggestions, that we have those conversations. And it's a big undertaking of a project, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I can't help but think, boy, do I wish you had lived there when they were redoing Turnpike Road, and we could have looked at it at the same time. I see them kind of nodding in the back, because it would have been nice. Don't know that we would have thought then that it was a problem. Again, it isn't just this year's water that's creating the situation, but this could happen again.
I mean, hearsay from the neighbors is that it does.
Yeah.
So, again, we haven't lived there long enough.
And
to-
no, it really wasn't a problem for anyone else. They didn't
Well, they're the
perceive it as
neighbors.
an issue.
Well, they're the neighbors, so it didn't affect them.
That's right.
That's, so,
Yep, you have some water over there.
yeah. It's right by their door, so they see when they
Carl, my brain, is getting old here, but I remember a couple of instances in the past, many years past, when we had similar problems on other roads here in town.
I kind of like to mention that there are several of these same situations in other parts of the town that have been here since Elwood's time.
Yeah.
So it's not a unique situation, and I understand that all of them should be addressed, but there is a cost to each one of those. And yes, I can think of one in particular that we discussed tonight on Village Hill Road at the bottom of the, where Schofield and Village Hill come together.
Yeah.
And when we talk about a pond, there's a pond down the bottom. And we finally got to perhaps doing something when Mike was here, and the cost at that time was in the same range at that time. about $38,000 to take it out to the back
Yeah.
where it could drain properly. So that's just one of those. And when Elwood was still here, we did do another one. It took us 400 feet to get to the back of a property. We reserved the right-of-way, but the right-of-way's been completely planted and we can't get to the plunge pool anymore at this point. So your point is well taken. We have many of those areas.
So, what, if you just been made the boss of everything, as long as you don't spend too much money, what would your recommendation be?
Well, the thing right now is that apparently from what Troy's been saying is that a quarter of the pipe was flowing when you had a lot of water. So that pipe is full. It's of the same size that you would have in a septic system layout, and you can get someone, depending on the stability of the pipe now, you can get someone like Roto-Rooter to literally clean that pipe out of roots and sediment, but there's no guarantee that it'll be a solution, and it'll only drain after the storm's passed. It'll get that pond area away from the front area eventually.
And how much, I mean, a ballpark figure of how much it would cost to clean out that pipe?
I would say probably in the range of somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000.
Okay. That,
I have a question that may be the same question in the back. So this is the pipe you're talking about unclogging?
No, that's the 18-inch pipe.
That's 18-inch pipe.
The other one is only
Right below your hand.
But it's here, we're talking about,
That's the other side, it's down below, the water's flowing over. That
Okay,
line right
here.
there, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So you're saying only a quarter of it is coming out now because it's clogged. I may not fully understand how this water works, but if you unclog it, are we gonna have more water, not less water?
But more water going to the back,
Yeah.
not going over the top. What happens now is that
Okay.
if it's partially clogged, the water's gonna build up, it can't get through, so it's
Gonna
gonna come
pool
over
here.
the top.
Okay. So you're hoping unclogging it will get it to flow the way it was originally meant to?
It will at least drain after the storm. During the storm situation, if you have a high-intensity storm, the pipe still is insufficient to carry the same amount of flow that an 18-inch pipe would. There's no question of that.
Could we replace a shorter portion, I mean, that pipe, and not extend it? Is that an option?
Well,
I know you're shaking.
I would think that if you started that, you want to get past the
Okay.
house area and the well area. You want to be beyond the well. in this
It's not that much
particular case.
further, it's probably another 50 feet after the well, it's only gonna be after the well tops, where it dumps out now.
All right, yes.
Kim Walsh, 29 Lindsay Lane. I guess my question is, how do you go from an 18-inch pipe to a 4-inch pipe? It's never gonna completely drain. And all that went over it.
I had really high hopes that they put in that 18-inch pipe when they redid the roads, and sadly they didn't. They just replaced it with a newer 18-inch pipe. So we use the same
Well,
engineering.
again, there was no issue at the time this
Right.
work was done. If it had come up, certainly we would have included something in this package, but it wasn't even an
Wasn't,
issue,
right.
so. Otherwise, I would have had some notes in my file, pertinent to that, we would have done something.
so if cleaning the 4-inch pipe would do some good, and that would cost not quite as much as doing the whole project, would it be worth doing that to at least mitigate some of the problems that we have, or?
It comes with some risk, as I said, because of the stability of the pipe. If what Troy's saying is true, that it's an Orangeburg pipe, these things after years deteriorate.
And how long is it?
I would have to guess maybe
Probably,
80 feet or so.
no, probably longer than that. As it goes from there, goes past the back of the house, probably 100,
So probably,
150 feet, give or
so
take.
replacing it would cost,
Okay.
replacing it would cost just as much as the whole project anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay.
Is this the town's pipe, or is this the pipe that the homeowner originally installed, or does
Yep.
anybody know?
I checked everything that I could find, the deed, everything, there's no mention of that. However, it's a highway culvert, which is a town culvert dumping water onto the property. but I
No,
can't,
I
I can
just-
find nothing about the pipe. We did do our research, I mean, I know on our end we did, I'm not sure
Yeah,
if you guys,
there's-
but we looked everywhere and.
The record keeping starts and stops at a certain point, so I feel like there was a time where we were in the old Wild Wild West.
We actually looked at an aerial photograph today from 1934, which kind of showed a leak off in that same area.
That same area.
So it's, if nothing else, in terms of the town's rights, it has at least a prescriptive easement, which means that of right, it can drain there. The 4-inch pipe, I would assume, probably was put in by the first homeowner who wanted to drain that little bit of a pool area that built up just at the discharge.
And in those days, they probably just cut. Yes, ma'am?
But there was no swales there. Those swales, we have those pictures I sent you from 2012,
Yeah.
Google Map.
And they
And
cut
those
it out.
swales weren't there. But there was nothing,
No, and Carl did say that one across the road was put in because of erosion.
right, so.
Oh, you're
so-
talking about the paved swales would
Yes.
prevent erosion from water that was already
Right,
going in.
but so it's creating more water on the property now than.
Well, the water was going in there, but it was eroding the soil where it ran off the road. So we paved it so that it wouldn't create erosion and continue to fill in the pipe that crosses the road. Because the pipe crossing the road was also full of sediment. That's why we had.
Why I wish we had some pictures from post Turnpike Road
Anyway,
and prehistoric rainfall years.
Anyway, we're kind of
Yes.
beating a dead horse here. Can we figure out, do we have an answer? Is there any suggestions?
Well, so I think we have one suggestion by the homeowners who are saying, we'd like you to spend whatever it
Yeah.
takes to fix my issue, and,
And I know the right way to do it is that way.
right?
I'm not looking to bankrupt the town in any way, shape, or
Right,
form, but
and
at the same time.
I'm not suggesting you are, I'm just not sure that there's a middle ground solution that
Yeah.
really does what it should do. That if we were to spend a smaller, mid-sized, mid-range amount of money
It's gonna
to
be-
not fix the problem and still have the same issue. So to me,
So-
it's either we continue with the way it is, or we have to fix it properly. I see those as our two issues.
The other thing that we haven't discussed is that you could literally dig out the 4-inch pipe and create an open swale to go all the way down to the back. That's the other option. And the contours speak to the fact that there is a shallow area that you could concentrate that floating in an open swale to get it out to the back.
So my only concern with that though is that right now, when it flows over, and this is just a couple inches flowing over the top, it erodes my yard. When we do a swale, if we were to do a swale, how deep's that gonna get, how quick, with how fast that water's gonna run down there?
Well, a swale would be sized according to the grade of the road and the amount of water that would be coming out of that pipe. And so it would be sized for the amount of water that should be coming through there. But then again, here's another issue. You have to pick the storm.
Yeah.
Do you want to protect it for a 50-year, 100-year, or a greater storm? We've been seeing, a higher frequency of rain, so. So open swale, clean out the 4-inch pipe, or reconstruct the entire discharge area with a new pipe and a new outlet.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of options for discussion. I think at a minimum, taking a look at the pipe that is town-owned anyway, and whatever part of it is
The
town-owned.
town-owned pipe is clear now. It's the
Okay.
4-inch pipe, which I don't think that it was installed by the town, just because the town would never install a pipe that small, that I would be aware of,
Okay.
especially with Orangeburg, which is a sewer pipe.
So then it seems like there's maybe some option for the homeowner to take a look at in terms of investigating that pipe. And then conversations to happen with whom? Because is this something that we decide upon, like what the forward progress would be? Who is the person that he connects with in order to, or that the both homeowners, I apologize, connect with in order to make a decision about what happens next? Especially if there's some process or expense that needs to be incurred on the part of the homeowner.
I would say communication between both Public Works Department and the Selectman's office would be appropriate. What I'm hearing you say is that maybe it's his job to investigate what to do with the 4-inch pipe.
Well, I don't know.
As it's not ours, and I think that's how we started here, right? So the
It's-
water, the diversion of water comes from us. The
Right.
pipe may have been put in by a homeowner before,
State
so
law
it's the chicken and the egg.
Yeah, so regardless, state law dictates that if water comes to my property, the town or whoever is discharging it has to make a reasonable effort to not destroy the property. So regardless of what's there, it's still the person discharging the water's responsibility to make sure it discharges appropriately and doesn't do any damage to the property.
Okay, so I'm not trying to advocate one way or another. I'm just saying, I don't know that this is a decision that I make, or this is,
I know, and I just-
you know, that this is a decision that Public Works
Eventually,
has to make.
if we decide that's the directions to remove that pipe, then it is our decision to spend those
So,
funds.
the
That's
only
where we
reason
have
I'm here is because I was already told no, so I'm coming
Right.
here, I'm following my steps before I go
Yeah.
further. So that's the only reason that we're here. I wanted to bring it up to higher powers that be, per se. And
Right.
Where else would he go? I mean,
I mean,
where
after
else-
that, the next
there-
thing is
he supposed to go
legal.
to P and Z, to planning and zoning? Where
Yeah.
else does he go?
Right, so let's have some more conversations about, I want to hear what now we have a third option, albeit maybe not a final solution, and see where those lie and what that really looks like, and see what else we can present and to find a solution. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome, thank you. Okay. Now, item C was a discussion for policy for educational funding. So you have in your packet a request from a town employee who has decided to further her education in pursuing a degree. It's certainly, besides being time, time is certainly an issue. Cost is obviously for anyone advancing their education. So the request was made by Robin Campbell. She did take a course this summer and is now asking us to consider a policy on potentially investing essentially in our staff. So what Robin shared with you was a policy from the Board of Education. And theirs is very specific. I did reach out and find there's several towns. Oh, okay. So there are 8 towns that I could easily find information on because they've shared that with CCM, that they have policies in place on a similar policy, and they have, I apologize, it's on multiple pages. And what doesn't show up here is the amount. I believe the highest of these, and I apologize, when Robin printed it, what didn't, oh, here it is on the third page. They range from, interestingly enough to say, we have a policy, and we give $0 in Bloomfield, to a $3,000 per employee in Westport. So you can see the range. Mansfield has language to such. There are some towns that have $1,000, $1,500. There certainly are criteria. They are on an annual basis. This would be a budget increase for us. But something for us to consider. John, has this been discussed prior, to your knowledge?
No.
Any requests come prior to this?
No, I don't recall it.
You know, we cover certifications for certain employees, tax collector, assessors, our town clerk, currently under assistant zoning agent. When the request was made, the discussion was that this is another way to further education, just in a different direction. And would we consider investing, absorbing some of the classes, some of the costs of the classes, and that it could benefit all of us. It certainly could benefit our employees to pursue further education. I definitely see that as a benefit to the town, but it does not come without a budgetary impact, a financial impact.
I mean, I think it's a fine idea. I think figuring out if it's feasible is probably smart, good first step. I mean, there are a lot of different kinds of organizations that I've worked for, and all of them have offered some sort of incentive to either take professional development, some, offer tuition remission, I work at universities, so they're able to do that quite cheaply for themselves anyway. Some cover, like this proposal, $500, up to $500 per academic term. I think if it's something that we can find a space for in the budget, and even if that's something that changes every year, I know, so working at UPenn right now, there's a certain amount of money that's collected every year, and it changes every year for graduate students to get some reimbursement for childcare expenses. And so what they say is, at the close of this quarter, we had this amount of money in this budget, in this line item. Depending on how many submissions we get, you can get up to, $500 in reimbursement, or up to $300 in reimbursement, or $100,000, whatever the budget can accommodate. I think there are a couple of benefits. One, it does further the education and hopefully the skill set of the staff here. Two, as we have learned recently in our hiring process, we have to do whatever we can to sweeten the pot to get quality staff members to accept positions here, and this might be one way to do that.
I can tell you in this particular case, she's already taken a class this summer and used some of the things she's learned in what she's doing now, so with no help from us, we're benefiting from the furthering education that she's getting. I think it's something I'd like us to look into, so if there's first, we assess if there is interest in this by the board, one moment, sir, and then what I'll do is go to these other towns and grab their policies specifically and see what that exact language looks like, if they're willing to share those with us. You can see in the Board of Education policy, they're eligible for $500 or 50% of the cost with a maximum of $1,000 per year. That's certainly just one instance. We can structure it with what financially works for us, but I can tell you at the top, we budget for $200 per course for our tax collector to become certified. I don't see this as much different, investing in our other employees for similar education.
Only in that tax collector, assessor, town clerk, these are people, are required to have a certain accreditation, and we can hire them without that, but then they have to.
So the assessor, yes, has to have it. Tax collector and town clerk, we require them to. It is, in order to be a municipal tax collector, you do not have to be certified. And a town clerk, that is correct. It is in our best interest for them to be certified. No.
Okay, then. I stand corrected then.
But we certainly encourage that, and we require that as a town. So.
Okay, well, then,
I see it as an investment in our staff.
it is an investment. It's the hard part here is we can't just say, okay, tonight, that's it, it's done.
I am not
And,
in any means suggesting, this is why it's specifically a discussion item, that there's a lot of information to gather, and we'd have to decide on a policy that then would have to be voted on before we can move in that direction. So there's work to be done here, but I believe it's worth investigating, and I see the value in it. I see the value in encouraging our employees to further their education, and not just in, right now, all we have to offer them outside of their coursework and their individual departments is programming that CCM offers, or something else we can find online through towns. And I think there's so much more that can be gathered. We may have one, we could potentially have 10 people who take us up on this offer, so we'd have to be prepared for that. But if we can benefit from encouraging one of our employees to further their education and help benefit themselves in the town, I think it's worth it.
So we also would go with whatever course they were taking would have to be tied in with their job. You couldn't have a job in the tax collector's office and take courses in art history or something like that.
I think that's fair stipulation.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And
Right,
I've seen,
right.
like, the one I have to do right now, it does say that you either, like, it gives 3 requirements, one of them being it has to connect to
Yeah.
your position
That would be
in
my
some way, shape, or form.
And some of the positions are, I hesitated when you first started that comment because, obviously, we're not going to pay Robin to, in this instance, with this request, a hypothetical, to become an art history major.
Yeah.
But certainly she's looking, if someone wanted
But
to
you
go out
also
there and look
feel-
into public administration, yes, and she may be able to use that here. She may be able to use that to lead here, and
But
better
you-
themselves, and I think it's important that we invest in our employees.
But if you offer this to one, then you have to offer it to all.
That's exactly what
And
I,
while Robin's not gonna go for art history,
right, so we put,
somewhere someone will.
and that's why we begin this,
Yeah.
and we take a look at some policies, and then we decide what is right for our policy. And we can put those sort of stipulations on, but again, I think it's important. I think it's important enough that I'd like to see us begin the process of developing a policy.
You can add this to the selectmen status.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yes, Mr. Sinatra.
I
So
strongly
suddenly
believe
wanting-
that you're all 100% correct in believing that education is good for your employees and it helps maintain them. Most of the organizations I've been involved in, including in this town, I believe with the Board of Education, it's a collective bargaining option, not something that you just offer out of the blue, so that you can work through all these. And so if you have limited funds, then you know who, let's say there's 6 people that all want the money, and there's got to be some way to solve that, and that's all generally worked out in the collective bargaining, so you don't have to fight about it later. Just saying
Right.
that, that may be something that you want to
Well, and
bring
for
up
argument's sake,
at
we
that
have-
point, rather
we
than
have-
just a separate policy.
Unlike the Board of Education, in the schools here, specifically in Willington, all of their employees are in a union, only a portion of ours are. So we have a union that covers a portion of our employees and the others are not. So, and they would, they're governed more by the personnel policy, and so it would be in there.
So that should be part of your policy. You should say who's your class of workers that you're aiming for. I think, by the way, I do think it's a good idea.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so I hope to continue to share with you new items. Okay, appointments. Thanks for hanging with us so far. We have several new appointments. We received a communication from Rich Mindick, who's chair of EDC. They have moved from an intern to a recording secretary now. So I moved to appoint Mary Vertifay as the recording secretary for Economic Development Commission, retroactive July 1, 2019, expiring June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, the next are a group of appointments for the Emergency Efficiency Committee. I have one note on that. When we discussed this committee, we had agreed that there be 3 members and 1 alternate, and the other department put 3 members, 1 alternate, and then a member of the Board of Finance. You're asking now, saying you need 2 alternates. I don't know how this board feels. I am not opposed to it as long as the other department agrees, and that they're then allowed to put up another alternate, so that we go into this. We had come to an agreement, and this veers from that, and I just want to keep things moving in a forward direction.
Brief explanation for the change is the schedules that we keep at work. We want to keep the committee rolling and stuff, and we don't want to hold up any meetings if we can do it. So therefore, if one of us is at work, we have an alternate, and there's a couple of us on the committee that have busy work schedules that run into late hours and stuff. So again, I spoke with Alex briefly about it, and he didn't seem to have an objection, and whichever way they want to handle it. So
The selectmen, do you feel comfortable with that? If the other, and I'll ask the other department next if they have a problem. There are a couple of members, I believe, Stuart.
We have no objection.
Okay, so then you would then be able to put forth another alternate. I do ask that we had asked what the position in the department for the members were. If you could share with those for Mike and Tom.
Tom is member, Mike is lieutenant.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I move to appoint Tom Snyder as
Yeah,
a...
so
Oh,
I have a
sorry.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
The only agreement that, or before this, we had agreed it would be a chief officer, president, or vice president that would be appointed to the committee.
Chief officer,
President and or vice president.
president, alternate.
Chief officers,
Yeah.
that's why.
I think we discussed in the communications between the three of us,
Yes.
that they be people within your departments who had decision-making ability.
Not that I have an issue with who's on the committee for personnel, it's just, we had chose chief officers, so 3 chief officers and the president and the vice president. Specifically, they were the key decision-making people within the department
Right.
to attend these
And
meetings.
Our understanding of it was a chief officer, the president, and who's an alternate, has to be seen as an alternate, and not the vice president, but in our case, again, assistant chief. So,
It's your guys' decision.
So it is our committee, and we had agreed to those terms. I said before at a meeting, and I'll say it again if my fellow selectmen feel same or different, feel free to say, that I'm happy that we're all at the table having this discussion, and that I'd like the departments to lead this. So if you feel that this is an adequate representation of both departments to move forward with the process and the discussion, then I'm fine with that, I support that. Again, I wanted it to be led by the departments.
and first and foremost, I think this committee has to have quite a bit of flexibility, and in that it starts here, with our appointment of officers and who we can do, and the best people we think it can fit the bill for the committee.
While I agree with you, we did have multiple communications agreeing to some
Right.
terms, and so this is varies from those terms, and I think that's to Alex's point. Again, if the committee can move forward with decision-making on behalf of the departments, I support the members that you both put forward.
And again, let me put this out there as well. I mean, most of you guys know that our department is run where all the decisions based on our bylaws and stuff have to be run through our membership. So I can put the janitor in this committee, they still have to go back to the membership and say, before any decision that changes the effect of our department, has to go back to the membership for a vote to say, is that acceptable? I mean, again, they put the people in the position on the committee that can give the best information, lean the best direction, things like that. But again, even me as chief, I can't say, okay, we're gonna do A, B, and C without the permission of my membership.
Did your membership vote on these appointments?
They agreed to it, yes.
Did
It
you
wasn't a
have-
vote, it was gonna be on the committee, they're appointed, so.
Again,
Again, it's always been
I stated
that
how
way.
I felt on it. I mean, again, we agreed to it. If the other departments feel that these appointments, I believe you've seen a list of names.
Yes, we're fine.
Okay. So with that, I move to appoint Tom, did you
Oh,
have
I
something to
was
say? Sorry.
just going to say, I thought part of the whole idea here was to have all officers, because officers generally can speak for their people in a meeting. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, except that if you're having 2 organizations meeting and trying to settle something between them, generally you get the guys who, the bosses, the guys who can speak and not have to say, well, okay, let me go back and check and we'll take a vote. All right, but they voted us down. It makes for really, really hard negotiating.
Yes, sir.
Mike McCoo, Clover Springs Drive, Wellington Fire Department. I think one of my names is the subject of discussion here.
Yeah.
I guess I would hope to offer for consideration that I was a member of the previous efficiency committee. I have been fire chief and president of Willington Hill, so I understand the issues. I've been involved in a lot of the previous negotiating groups, the previous study, the facility study committee, which I chaired for a while. We had a chief's corps for a while that worked with both departments. The actual plan that the departments work on right now, where both departments respond to all calls together, was the first time when the departments really worked together actively to build a joint operations plan. I was integral in that negotiation, working with Tyler and Stewart and a bunch of other people. So I guess I would hope that my resume, including being a retired fire chief from a career department, would help be a benefit to the committee. And my relationship with Willington 1, I think, is good, so it would benefit the committee. Just as the chief said, I have at least, if not maybe a better opportunity to speak to the members of our department and say, here's what we're talking about in the meeting, here's the parts that we approved. And I mean, the chief may make this presentation, but I can put my history of almost 40 years with Willington Hill to supporting what the chief says to the membership so they can vote on it. And the things that can be decided on by the chief in this meeting environment, some things can be decided on by the membership. That can get decided on anyway. My involvement won't hold that up.
And I'm not looking at any one person.
I know, but
Communication came from a department
Right.
to the other department that involved my office as to, we want to come to the table, we want to talk. So it was led by your departments, and there were agreements made on who those people would be.
I'm just pointing out.
I know, and I
I'm just
think
pointing out I have reasonable experience and I have availability.
that, I think the frustration could be, or the uncertainty is just that this year seemed to veer a little bit from the discussion we had. Again, if the departments are fine with it, I have
think
no
we're fine with it.
problem.
I don't have an issue
So
with
can we
it.
move
I'm
on?
not questioning the personnel.
No, not at all.
Just,
I said if you both agree, I'm willing to move forward,
well, okay.
so.
If you
So I
both
think we've
agree.
heard, so they clearly agree because they put the names up.
And I agree.
Okay.
They clearly agree because they're saying, so if we can
And I'm ready to
move this
a
along
couple of
because
times.
it's 8:15.
So I'll once again move to appoint Tom
I've been working
Snyder
for 12 hours already.
as a member of the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee effective July 15th, 2019, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
One second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I move to reappoint Mike McCoo as a member of the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee effective July 15th, 2019, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I move to appoint Bobby Knight as a member of the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee effective July 15th, 2019, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
Second.
Whoever you choose. Well, second by John.
We usually aren't grateful for that.
Erica,
Any,
can you put it as Robert Knight?
no, it's too late, yes. I amend that to say Robert Knight. The only outside of here we can call you Bobby, is that how it works? All right. All those in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
I move to appoint Tom Smith as an alternate member of the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee effective July 15th, 2019, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I move to appoint James Knight as an alternate member of the Emergency Services Efficiency Committee effective July 15th, 2019, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I want to thank you all for agreeing to be on this committee. You can send us another name at our next meeting, we can approve your second alternate. I would still hope that now that we have members from both sides and our member from the Board of Finance, that maybe we can see some meetings begin, and a list of those would be helpful. So we look forward to forward progress, so thank you. All right, old business. Item A, discussion on the property purchase at 25 Old Farms Road. So since we last met and this item was on the agenda, we did receive some information, so thank you for the information that we had requested. I don't know if you each had copies in your packet of this. This
It was emailed.
Okay, so I'll give you copies here to look at. They're the photographs and the engineer's report from looking at potential crumbling foundation. Because records back in the day weren't what they used to be, we believe that, the church was built in 71, even though the
Sure.
property card says 1980. That's
Yes. Yes, the church was built in 71. We checked the records here, and the building permits and the approvals by, I believe Eric Weigel was the building official at the time, are all signed off in 1971.
Okay. All right.
I think we even have the receipt for the concrete, believe it or not.
Yeah, do we want to ask?
You know, as I'm thinking about it, I think that would stick out in my head. So
Or
maybe
we
we have,
just
maybe we have
assume
the
at this
receipt
point.
from the company that put the concrete in, but maybe not the truck it came out of, I'm not sure.
One of the other items that I'd asked for was, oh, I'm sorry, so for the public knowledge, the visual inspection report shows no effects of pyritites crumbling or concrete crumbling on either the slab under the church or the foundation of the rectory.
Who was the engineer?
Michael Dion.
Michael Dion.
Okay. Thank you.
So that, I thought that was, I think that's important for us to have. The other item that we were awaiting was to see a more detailed report of the, how the potential $10,000 in their budget would be spent. I know you each got, did you receive it?
I don't have a copy of that.
Okay, so I did this today, I apologize. So what they're asking for is $9,676 is the breakdown for $1,000 for building maintenance, $3,194 for electricity. Is that in both buildings?
Yeah, the whole part.
Okay. Heating and propane, approximately 1,900 gallons to the cost of $2,232, again, both buildings. Insurance for $3,250, no money for equipment or medical.
And again, those figures that are in front of you are estimates based on what they've used in the past, and, you know, to our best guess as the, how much use will be done in the property and stuff, and also vendors and things like that. They're using some of the IFS stuff that we're doing.
We did talk about agreements. They divided the agreements into two, and you should have each reviewed copies. We have emails and want to give you copies of them here with you today. We did receive a communication from the chair of the Board of Finance. Jim had some questions, and I think at least two of the things you wanted us to inquire about I can answer to. One was regarding the town's ownership interest. There was a meeting with the USDA and members, a member of the department representing the department and myself and two members of your board. And there are no grant opportunities, really. They have, well, you know, I want to say it was somewhere around $169,000, $135,000 in grant money for the entire state. So we wouldn't be looking at grant money. What they could then offer.
We could maybe get $5,000.
There was a max on that, yes. It was a certain percentage, up to a certain maximum, so very little money. What we could potentially be looking at from USDA would be a loan, a longer-term loan, that if there were to be a firehouse constructed on that property, the caveat is the town would have to own the property.
Outright.
Outright. They didn't seem to bend on that. That would have to happen. And currently, the agreement that's put forth is that the fire department would retain ownership of the property. So if we were to agree to this, if this goes to the town meeting and the town says yes, and then later down the road, something else were to happen, we'd have to look at that all over again in order to, if that were the mechanism that were to be used, we'd have to revisit all of those things. And then you'd ask that we plan for how the town would return money should we mutually decide to exit the deal. I think we both, members here, had some questions on how that would work. Liza had expressed interest in how we could maybe make it, not necessarily with interest, but proportionate to our input. Yes. And I did share those concerns with the town attorney, or those requests to be put into a counter document which we still do not have at this point. And one of the things I want to bring up is that the document that you have, one of the sticking points is that we finalize and memorialize this in order to decide if we should go to town meeting. That kind of puts us at, we have to finish this before we can move to step B. That's something that we could take out of the agreement, is that we have agreed to memorialize this in order to determine if we need to go to town meeting. So do we want a signed, or do we want an agreement that's been fully negotiated before we move forward with any said recommendation? Or do we not? Do we want to decide if the townspeople have interest in funding this, and then we put forth?
Well, now you're referring to the investment side of the $50,000, correct? In terms
No.
of interest?
No, I'm
or-
talking about specific to the agreement. But for our standpoint, do we want a funding agreement in place first?
Yeah.
I mean, all the details before we determine if we go to town meeting. That's where, I think we've gathered the information that we've asked for. There were some things we were waiting on, and I believe they've given us those. So if it's, we want everything we want in the funding agreement, and that's what we present at town meeting, not just should we, the wording of the question would be such,
Want to comment on that?
Yes.
I think, and it may even be misunderstanding in the communication between you and then the chief and then the lawyer's office. I think what the lawyer was striving for was the desire, all this due diligence, the desire for this board to have enough information to tell the Board of Finance what they needed to hear to move it forward, and maybe a different choice of words is needed.
right, so that's what I'm saying, so understanding,
they
that's
were
what I
trying
said
to
to
get what you
that's what
wanted.
I said to the town attorney was, if I read this correctly, and possible that in legalese, you don't, so tell me what this says. And the way it's worded is that we do this in order to determine if we're going to call a town meeting. So that could be changed, but what I want to know from this board is, do you want all of the agreement ironed out before you're ready to say this should go to a town vote? Or do we send it to a town vote and then iron out the nitty-gritty details?
Well, specify nitty-gritty details.
How we're gonna get, how and when the $50,000 comes back to us if the intended use does not happen?
Currently, that's in an agreement. Currently,
That's in your version of the agreement. We have to decide what, that, I
if
think
you're gonna
what,
accept that version. I mean, our agreement was, the $50,000 goes to the fire department. If it's not used for a fire department, the property is sold, the $50,000 goes back to you.
but I think
That's in the agreement.
it's in an agreement that you have suggested to the town. It's not an agreement that the town has accepted and signed off on. So I think there's negotiation that would happen here that the town may not agree to those exact terms. And that's what would happen. We have to agree on the same contract essentially. At our last meeting, when we looked at it in one agreement, if some of the things that had come up that specifically Liza stated, getting how we would get our investment back, not just the $50,000, but our investment and how we could look at that.
So my question was, I think, pretty simple in terms of like what I'm asking. So let's say this is 10 years down the road. You all decide we've had this property for long enough. We haven't yet made any progress on building a fire department. We're going to try to sell it. You sell it for $600,000. The town invested $50,000. My only question was, do we get back proportionate what we put in, or we just get back the $50,000?
But it was my understanding and my request, that the town is not investing in the property. The town is providing the money so we can move forward with our services.
But the town's counter request may be that we invest in your property.
But
If the town
that makes us an investment realtor, and we're not that. We're just, we're not here to make everybody interest on property. Again, the agreement was, or the understanding of what I was trying to explain for this whole time is that the money would be the same as if we needed an engine for the truck. It's to help the services of the town, the fire department progress in an area that we really need.
So if that's
So
if that's
that's
the
in the
position and that's in the agreement and that's, then I think.
Again, it's just from our lawyer's perspective and our perspective, there's a lot of gray area as to percentages and investment terms and years and all this other stuff where it's gonna get way too money down, and again, it's not our business to invest the town's money and provide them with a return.
Well, yes.
But you're asking for an investment in a piece of property.
We're
That's what you're
asking for you to
asking for.
invest in the services that we're provided through the contract.
So if that's the
Because we need more
position,
stuff, we need
then,
more
then,
things to do a better service.
if that's the position, then we make that clear in the contract and then people vote on
And
it with that
it's
information.
clear.
Well, that's, okay, so
It's clear.
is that, are we accepting that agreement with nothing else to it? Does the town,
Okay, you know.
It's a guarantee on your money, it's just not, we're not an investment bank. So, again, to
But,
provide investment
but you're still going to use it as an investment.
for the town, for the provide services from the fire department.
Assuming that it ends
Not
up
for-
being used for
That's the
a
intent, yeah.
firehouse.
And if not, you get it back.
And if not, well, then you get a nice profit back and we get our money back.
Again, we've done that all along, I mean, with our money, and that's where we are in this position now. We've made good decisions with the
How
money.
about how about the $10,000? And that's, now I understand it's $10,000 a year that we're expected to invest in this, so if this goes 10 years,
the agreement is for $10,000 now. That's what the agreement is.
Yeah.
That my understanding is that they're gonna come back to us during budget season and add that
With
$10,000 onto
a better
their-
number, up or down, I mean, a
Right.
better number.
It could be
Because
more.
we'll be on the property, we'll have more ideas.
In February, we
So
could
where's it
see
gonna come?
an additional $5,000 or additional $25,000.
Or we're working on
In maintenance.
investing and we're working on trying to separate the property to rent the house, and then it could be $900 a year,
and,
as opposed to 10,000.
so, yeah, or it could be 10,000, you know.
It could be, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to lessen the burden of the taxpayers as best we can. And that's what we've done with our $300,000, and our intentions to rent the
So
property.
you're saying you'd be completely opposed to it being, I think it's easy to, if there's a $350,000 purchase, the percentage of our $50,000 to your $300,000, and if you were to sell it, look, if there's no fire department ever goes there and you're able to sell it for $600,000, first of all, yay. But what would be the harm to saying, you invested in us then, what we had hoped didn't happen, and now we're gonna return that to the town?
So, very brief history. Williamsville Fire Department started off completely privately funded in 1951. It has for 68 years raised money. Aside from the money the town's providing to provide services, has also been raising money. The benefit of that is the $70,000 that built the addition on the current building for the fire truck came from that fundraised money, not a penny of taxpayer money. The benefit of that is that the fire department was in this position where we've been saving money all these years saying, we know we're gonna need it someday, we don't know what for. Here we are, this opportunity comes up. It gave us an agility that the town didn't have and the town's budget process didn't have to negotiate on this property. And we worked very hard with that money. We used that money as leverage to negotiate a very good deal on the piece of property. We're investing 6/7 of the cost of the property. If we had all of it, we would probably be able to invest all of it. And so that's all in the furtherance of providing the service. The same thing we've done for 67 years. So it seems to me like a very good faith effort put forward on securing this property, which is absolutely not intended for anyone's personal benefit and is not intended to be an investment to be sold later to return money either. It's intended to be a furtherance of providing services to the town. So when we had the conversations with you in the very beginning, there was a lot of concern you expressed about liability with the town if they were part owner. You said repeatedly, if the town invests in this, does it make them part owner? It creates a liability situation. We eradicated that through discussions back and forth and with other discussions.
No, I asked that question, that was never mutually agreed upon.
No, I didn't say any different than that, I'm with you. You asked that question, we had a lot of, that came up many times in conversation. We tried to, one of the things we're able to do, doing it this way, is eradicate that problem by saying the town is not on the title or the deed right now. Gives us the agility to move and close on the property, and it keeps the town out of the liability for the property because they're not owner. Down the road, when we move to the next steps of developing the property, then we go through all these processes, you know, whether it's finance, capital, zoning, building, selectmen, grants, all that other stuff, then all these things come back up again, and maybe the town has a great windfall from the tolls, and says, and they have a great windfall, and the opportunity is there to build a fire station, and then all this stuff is discussed again, and then the current piece of property comes into the question, and all this stuff gets worked out. The town never loses in any of this, and I think we've put forth a really good effort to try to answer these questions, you know, and so it's a little bit of a turn back around now. It's good to be asking these questions, but in the meantime, months and months are going by, and all we're trying to do right now is secure the property, close on the property.
And you're able to do that, is that correct? You've said time and again, you're able to secure the property.
Because we're borrowing money, which means we're gonna incur finance charges, which if we have to do, we have to do, because we think it's a deal we can't pass up.
Right, but I think it's important that our townspeople know that this is an option they have.
Absolutely.
You entered into an agreement to purchase a piece of property the town had nothing to do with.
Absolutely.
And that if the townspeople, no matter what we decide here, no matter what we talk about, the townspeople are gonna decide.
Yes.
Okay? And so that, it does not matter. And if the townspeople say no, you're still entered into an agreement to purchase a piece of property.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so those fees you incurred, you may still have to at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But what we talked about was, I specifically had questions about entering into an agreement with an entity that we had questions and concerns about. That's what I asked about, and the liability of that specifically. If the intent is always that down the road, the town would put a fire department on that piece of property, then our $50,000 is a moot point. We invested in that. If that does not come to fruition, I don't see the harm in saying to our townspeople, you were willing to give back proportionately what the town put in if you were able to make a windfall on the sale of a piece of property that could not be used in the manner in which you had hoped it to be used. That's one piece. We're not looking to become real estate moguls here. We're just saying if we encourage the townspeople and say this is a good idea, we're going to take this to you to a vote now, but if it doesn't happen and they make $600,000, you're going to make an investment on that too. That's what we're saying. Is it possible to look at?
I think these are very reasonable points. I just feel like we're caught in a little bit of analysis paralysis. Like we take steps and we get told, okay, here's the next step we need to accomplish, so we did it. So we invested thousands of dollars in inspections, which was the right thing to do. I'm not arguing it, but just we did it, okay. Then the next step, so send us an agreement what you can do with the money, now send us 2 agreements. All good ideas, but it's in this very slow process. In the meantime, months are going by.
But Tom, how often do you enter an agreement that both sides don't have a say, and it's a negotiated agreement? This is not you tell us what to sign and we sign it.
Well, I think you asked for us to offer,
And you
so
did,
that's,
and
so
we
we've
may
offered
then,
2
and
versions.
we may edit it and offer and say, do you accept this version on the town's behalf? That's what making a change in, we'll give you $50,000, but there's an investment return on
You
it.
say what's the harm in going that route, what's the harm in presenting this to the townspeople as is?
What if the townspeople say no?
That's up to the townspeople.
Then what, yeah, but that's the townspeople.
I don't know that the townspeople will say yes or no based on the fact that they may get an investment return.
I don't know either. There's another.
And that's what we're stuck on right here.
Another question that I haven't heard dealt with here. How about taxes? Who's going to pay the taxes on that land?
It's being used as a fire department, and that's our intent. And typically the taxes are not, we're exempt from taxes on a fire department property.
I don't know, because you already have a piece of land. Now, I understand from the assessor that come October 1st, if the land still belongs to the diocese, that they're going to have to start paying taxes on it, because it's no longer being used as a, for worship purposes.
Conversations we have had is it's going to be used as fire department primarily. Training, meeting, such as that. Storage, things like that. So it's all fire department use.
I believe it's up to us to determine if it's not an automatic, a fire department's not an automatic exemption.
I don't believe you're automatically exempt, and I don't know how
No,
that's
but it is
come
very standard practice across the whole state.
But
It's not.
in spite of that, even if you are tax exempt, the assessor gives me a ballpark figure of about $17,000 a year would be the taxes on that property. So if you hold it for 10 years, that's 10 years we're not and you don't pay taxes, that's 10 years before going $170,000.
But there are a lot of what-ifs, John. I mean, the members who voted, I was surprised, we had basically unanimous membership. We had only one member of the entire department who did not vote for tying up this money, and that was all to their disadvantage, I guess is the right word, because they all gave up the stipend that they were earning off of the interest on that money. That's part of how we built that money, is by reinvesting it and using part of it for stipend. So the members, they're giving. They're not just giving money that was raised by fundraising, but they're giving up their stipend. So there are a lot of what-ifs about where the money could flow. The basic thing is, we had an opportunity that everybody in the world, including the selectmen, had an opportunity at that property. It wasn't right for all the other people in the world. We worked very hard. We beat up the diocese a lot. And we have something that they are very much in support of. As a matter of fact, they said they were willing to go lower because they wanted to see it go back into public use. So we have this opportunity, and it seems like we're spending a lot of time focusing on all these what-ifs and these analyses, which are important, but months and months are going by, and we're not, it's never getting to the voters to vote on.
It also seems like we're losing track of what we're trying to do here. We'd like the support from you guys in terms of taxes, in terms of, you know, letting us be exempt from taxes, things like that. We'd like the support so we can provide the services of a fire department.
If you don't,
as opposed to being the other way.
if you
and
didn't
saying,
have
well,
that property and somebody else bought it, you'd still be providing us fire service. We wouldn't be losing that service.
Right, but
Okay.
again, it's things that
So-
we need to provide the service better and more safe for our department.
And I will say, Mike, that I brought that, a potential to purchase that land to this very board,
Right.
and there was interest. But we
Right,
did
I just said it
recognize that we
wasn't
did, we couldn't afford it. The purchase would have been right, the property was right for the town, we didn't
Right,
have
but
the
the
funds.
circumstances weren't right for anybody else, otherwise anybody else would have already purchased it.
So
Like the price wasn't right.
here's my feeling on the matter, right? I think we've asked all the questions that we can possibly ask. I think the lawyer the town lawyer, attorney has looked at this.
He has the questions and additions we had, he has some notes on it and concerns before we were to sign this. What I'm hearing from the department is this is the agreement, they want us to take this,
I'm not
as if we
hearing
sign
that.
it.
I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing if we had a concrete request for a word modification or choice of language, that they would be open to hearing that.
That's not what I heard, I mean, Tom said, send this to the townspeople.
I mean, I said, what's the difference? I said, you know, when you asked for, what's the harm in an investment option, I said, what's the harm in presenting it as it is?
Right, so, I mean.
So are you okay with us giving you a
I would like to see
counter,
this go forward.
a counter offer,
I would
a
like to
counter agreement that we agree upon, that both sides agree upon?
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, I'd be open to that. The hesitation on my part is that, like Mike has said, we're going back and forth and back and forth.
And I think we were honest in the beginning, that
And
this
this
process,
could have been asked 2 months ago. I mean, we had an agreement in front of you that said the same thing, that was not separated.
and I sent
It was
this to
the
the
same
town
thing.
attorney, and we sent him
But
some
that was
things. I
not
did ask
presented.
him
Now-
again if he has,
Here we are again
Right.
with another option that has to go back, and like Mike said, it could have been done 2 months
these
ago.
two agreements with the things that the selectmen spoke about at our meeting, not 2 weeks ago, but the one 2 weeks before that. I gave to the town attorney, it's now separated into 2 agreements. He's had that since I received it from you with our corrections. I was honest in the beginning that the time frame that you have to close on the property isn't necessarily the same time frame that it is to work out the
We understand
details.
that completely.
And I'm not trying to delay that, I'm trying to make sure that we do what we feel is in the best
Right,
interest
and I
to
agree
take.
with you 100%.
Right.
It's just that, you know,
And
these
I
things
don't
could have been
believe,
hashed out
I
a
don't
long time
believe
ago.
this agreement is the best. And I've made my suggestions to the town attorney, I've asked him to come back with them, I don't have any corrections.
But again,
from
the
him.
original agreement said the same thing, it just wasn't separated, and that was months ago.
Right, and I
And you could have
sent
said at
that to
that
him,
point
and Liza made
that
the comment.
let's throw an investment clause in there, and nobody said anything to me until right now.
Okay, you were,
I mean, in terms of moving, in terms of putting
at
this
least
off.
4 weeks ago, that was in there, and that we talked about that, and Liza's comment was, can we take that to the town attorneys, which I did. I haven't
Okay.
received a new document back, and I did speak with him today, asked him if he had it ready. I asked last week that we were meeting today. So I was hoping to have another agreement that we could send to you. It is a negotiation, sometimes those things take time, which is why I asked a couple of times to make sure that you had what you needed, because we could inadvertently hold up something on your end, but when you entered into the agreement to buy that land, I'd hope that you were ready to purchase it, whether anyone said yes or no.
I hope in the end, when we're looking back at this, agreeing that this is a challenging thing to do and it's a major step, and I told the members of the department repeatedly, as we move forward in this and we make a decision to tie up $300,000 of money we've spent 67 years raising, it's a bold move and it's a significant move. But I told the members, I think it's a move that people 20 years from now will look back at and say it was a smart move and it was a gutsy move for the right reason. Just as we look back at previous members of our department doing things like putting their houses up to get the mortgage to add onto the firehouse, where the hall side was 5 houses were put up as guarantees for the loan. So recognizing it's a gutsy move and recognizing it's a challenging move, I just hope that the town fathers and mothers, is that the right term to use these days? I don't know. That will also keep in mind that we are doing everything we can from our end to make this work. If we could have done a process where the town put up the whole 350 through the capital process, that would have been a lot easier to map through the town's process. But we didn't seem to feel we were in a position for that. And so regardless, we hope that people realize that we're doing everything we can. We sought out the financing to cover the $50,000 gap. We have, by talking with the church parishioners, we have church parishioners already offering to donate money towards building the new fire station. I don't know the amount, maybe they're gonna offer $5. But the point is, we're making a lot of effort. We sought out the FDA people. We're still waiting for FEMA to introduce the next grant process. Maybe it'll include fire stations, maybe it won't. So I think we're doing all the things we can do. And we just want to make sure we have support with we want to make a good decision, but we also want, the hard work to be meaningful.
And I want you to know that we are doing our part on this side of the table as well. It's not in the time frame you want, Tom, I can see your frustration.
No, I'm only frustrated again because this could have been taken care of.
It's not that simple. It's not as simple as you gave us something with language, we counter it with you. Contract negotiations can take that time. And that's why I was trying to be honest in the beginning, it can be lengthy. We need to make sure that everyone's in agreement before we go to the town and say, and they need to know what they're agreeing on. If it's the town's gonna own the land, you're gonna own the land, we just need to be in agreement.
I mean, where does that open it up? I guess it's an answer for the question from the attorneys. Is if it's looked at as an investment or a return on the income, does that make you property owner?
Well, so part of the terms of your agreement, and if we agree to those, you say right in here that you retain ownership. Okay, so if we agreed to this, as you presented it, we would be agreeing to that. And I specifically asked him, what was asked by one of the selectmen was, could we look at it we use the term investment as a way to determine how the wording in the contract could be. So could it be a proportionate return on our funds? And that's only if what you intend to happen with the property doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, don't misunderstand my frustration as being, your due diligence.
Right.
I understand that, and I'm with you on that.
Right.
It's just that I feel that this.
And I've taken all of the things we talked about, I've given them to our attorney. We don't have anything to counter with you. I had really hoped we would have had that before tonight. I asked him last week, I asked him again this morning,
and I can certainly refer to our attorney and have him put something in there as well.
So can I make a motion for something here, please? And you can tell me if this is appropriate or not, or timely or not. So if we're talking about changing a couple of statements, or here's what I would like to say. I'll just make a statement here instead of a motion. I would like to see that it's a return in the percentage in which it's given, right? So if the ideal use of the property is not realized, that whatever the percentage is that we put in, we get that percentage back if the property is ever sold. That's all I'm asking, right? I think that's kind of fair and equitable, and also it goes the other way. If you send it for $100,000, then we just put in a clause that we want the percentage back, which would be less than
That's
50,
fine.
right? So that's my suggestion, is that that language be modified to be whatever the sale of the property is, the return back is proportionate to what we put in, okay, in terms of the sale. That's my one request. I don't know what legalese that needs to be put into. That's the only question that I had regarding this, right, 1/7, right? So I think that's fairly simple. If there's anything else that was a question regarding that, is it a matter of ironing out detail language, or are we talking about big
I
challenges?
think detail
that
language,
change the
I have
intent?
one of the things under a source of requested funding, I think that needs to be specific to the project. I know Board of Finance is gonna take up that topic.
Right,
The fire services
just-
agreement.
Just so
lets
you
some
know
of the
where we
things
are
out.
with that, I mean, we were waiting for the fiscal year to end and then waiting for then Donna to do her analysis. But Donna's been here a very long time and has earned many weeks of vacation and is taking that vacation now. But as soon as she's back, I'd like to ask her to finish that analysis.
Yeah, I agree with
We
you.
don't have to, I mean, if she finishes it early, we can meet early.
Yeah, no,
We're pretty flexible.
Okay,
We'll
I
tell
agree
you.
with you 100%.
Yeah, our board will meet earlier if we need to.
I mean, some of the language will come out and it's simply because it goes against the fire services. And I think that's an easy fix. The bigger fix was how we want proportion. If the two of you look at this and say, you want any changes, please suggest them to me so we can give them a counter offer.
I think I said it.
Okay, but I just
That was
wanted,
my
I just want to make sure that whatever you do or do not want to see in here, that we have duly stated.
So I would like to see that in there.
I would like to see a specific time frame on a return on the funds, a realistic time frame, in order to,
In what way?
after 10 years, a new firehouse isn't there.
I don't feel strongly about that.
Yeah, and I don't know about that either, because then what would stop the people, the taxpayers, or the town people from saying, we have an investment coming back, let's stop a firehouse?
I wouldn't stop it for that.
Well, I know you stopped it
The
for other
question
things.
the question is, of course, that when it comes time to build a new firehouse, is that where we're going to want it? Is that where the whole town's going to want
Again,
it?
it's something for later on to discuss. Right now, we're trying to secure it, and if.
And that's a task you give the efficiency committee also, right? I mean, that seems like right in the alley of the efficiency committee.
Okay.
Where is the right place for services? Right?
If that committee says it's not 25 Old Farms Road, are you going to be okay with that?
They've said it multiple
Okay.
times.
If
So
the truth-
That's
if the
another
truth-
conversation
if the
on
truth
the
is the
road,
truth.
right,
Conversation
okay.
down the road, we're on one topic.
So
Let's not get onto the next.
I'm hope, as soon as I get back the edits from our attorney, then I will
Okay.
forward them to you.
And we're open to
And you can take a look
the
at that.
investment, like you said, clause in there, the 1/7. You know, if you could relay to them, we're not in favor of a time frame, like I just expressed.
I'm not in favor of a time frame.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So, I'm kind of late to the party here on this whole issue. I have mixed feelings about this. I think as far as the fire safety complex, that's a perfect piece of property, perfect location. As a taxpayer, if I'm going to invest 1/7 in this property and that doesn't happen within a reasonable period of time, then I expect my investment of 1/7 to be returned to me as a taxpayer. Key point. Number two, as far as taxes on that property, until that property is providing an adequate improvement in fire services to the town of Wellington, then it's taxable, property taxable. It's not exempt until it is a true fire facility.
And we'll be providing immediately, in terms of training, grounds, the yard,
Yes,
storage,
I understand.
garage
But
space.
you can do that there, you can do that anywhere. You can do that where you've been doing it.
Right.
That's your garage?
So,
Yeah.
and as far as the house goes, if you split that off and rent it, that's taxable.
Right, and we agree
Yes.
there, absolutely.
They have to
100% agree.
split it off in order to rent it. Would you
I know.
ever entertain, if you didn't split it, allowing the town to use that as a facility?
We're open to that conversation, we have to see what is, you know, just like this, what are we offering, what are we talking about? We're not closing the door to something like
Yeah, no,
that.
we
There was
talked about
discussion about using it to house people who are having their foundations rebuilt, there's been discussion, There's been
I think I asked
discussion
if we could,
about,
and I think that was off, like we discussed.
well,
that
it
at
depended
the
on whether it
table.
was rented or not
Yeah,
rented.
the liability.
But-
And then there's been discussion about a lot of different things. There's discussion about, do you park the ambulance there and put the ambulance people on duty at night in there? Who knows if that's the right idea? I'm just saying, there's been 100 different things put up there. Anything can be on the table.
From our end, it's open, for discussion, like you said. The Realtor actually expressed that one, I forget which division of the town would like to use it. Or you, I thought he said,
He maybe gave
rec
us six,
department or
as I said, the
something.
rec department
Okay.
and
Right,
human
rec.
services, it would be
And
an
we're-
adequate use, if you have a use for the facility, there's something you could offer the town in, in another way of offering a service to the town.
Absolutely.
So we certainly are strapped for facility here, so I think it'd be entertaining, yes. we're
Similar
not
to even
done.
how we've been
I was
using the
gonna say,
facility.
I just want to, I want to add to the conversation here because I am a taxpayer. Unfortunately, I pay too much in taxes, but that's another story. If this is considered tax exempt because of a quasi-governmental entity, i.e. the fire department, the question arises, does this require an 8-24 review by the planning commission?
No, it does not.
Why?
I did the research because it's not municipally owned. And there's a clear line in this, and I'm sure you know this stuff well.
I'm not sure.
There's a clear line that says municipal purchase, municipal ownership. It says it.
Then if it's not municipal ownership, then it's taxable property.
No, because churches are not municipal
Well,
ownership.
you're not, it's
Well,
not a
you're not a
church.
church.
Right,
not
I'm
a
just
church.
saying, there can be
Right.
things that are not municipal
Right.
that are not
But as
taxable.
long as it's not, we know, as long as it's not being used as a church, it's taxable. So the minute, unfortunately, that ship sailed, but the minute the doors to the church closed, they should have been paying taxes to the town of WIllington. So, that's our.
Well, that's your gripe with the current owner of the property.
No, that's our
Which
loss
we
with
are
our
not.
previous assessors.
Well, that's our gripe with the current owner, but the thing is, churches are granted that by state law, that exemption by state law. I don't believe a fire association is.
Well, it would certainly be a big hullabaloo if all of a sudden fire stations were gonna get taxed. Because that's not typically done.
And we're not saying,
Including the training center in Tallinn, which is not actually a fire station. It's, I mean, I've done some of the research on this, so I think we're going down a rabbit
So
hole.
we haven't determined that is,
Yeah,
that is TBD.
Okay, so can I
currently-
make a suggestion that, I don't think there's any substantive changes to the content of that agreement, other than the 1/7 thing that we just discussed. If it's a matter of adding that language with the lawyers and ironing out the other language details between the lawyers and the fire department and their representative, I am comfortable with moving that forward and getting that prepared for a town meeting.
So, once we get it back, because what I want you to do, I want you to look at as long as we have our concerns and the town attorney has some language he said, but he hasn't given me back with corrected language on his part. So I want to say, I don't believe it's substantive, but it may be to your attorney. What our attorney takes out may not appear to either of us, any of us lay people. So,
Need to change this.
right, I believe as soon as we have what we believe will be a mutually agreed upon agreements, that then we.
Then we'll call the town meeting.
Or we can-
That's what I would like.
Can the Board of Finance,
But there has to be
Finance
discussion at the
proceed?
Board of Finance, we don't have any.
At this point, can the Board of Finance proceed then?
We can do our analysis.
And then make a decision on funding?
What is it that you're waiting for? From
Just
the-
down on the return and do an analysis. We were waiting for
Weren't you
waiting for the fiscal year,
They want an analysis on the fund.
the fund balance.
Weren't you waiting for the Board of Selectmen as well?
Usually the procedure has been that you guys come to the Board of Finance and say, here's, we've done our due diligence, there's no legal issues, there's no other issues. You don't have to get all, you could just say, we've gone far enough.
well, I think we're going to want to have it written out before the Board of Finance.
So, I mean, we'll
Right, so
do
we're
our
trying to figure out
analysis
these time
of how to pay
frames.
for it. That's what we need to figure out.
Because we can't have them send it to us, and then if we have a disagreement and we want to change it, then it has to go back to them. So you.
But I think the dollars are not changing, they're looking at $50,000
we'll just do it,
in
we'll
one and $10,000 in another, that's all they're looking at, those dollars aren't changing, we're not changing that and they're not changing that. So the dollars that the Board of Finance is looking at is not going to change, so they could have their discussions. They could then, all they do is make a recommendation to us, and then we determine if we then want to call a town meeting. And then those don't happen. Typically, the way that normal system works is we try to do it right away, because we've had, but if you have your discussion, let's say it meets at your normal time and we don't have our agreement ready, we'll at least know your piece. If you make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, when we're ready with our piece, then we can move forward. I don't think there's anything on our end that's keeping you up unless this board said we were not going to move forward.
The way I see it going now, you're gonna take this, you're gonna send it to the lawyer, he's gonna make any corrections we want, you're gonna go back to the fire department, you sit down with the fire department, you guys go through and you come to an agreement on language. Good enough so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you can take this and you can send it to the Board of Finance.
No, this document
If that's what you
doesn't go-
want, if that's
Well,
what
you
you.
can if you want to, but this document is between the selectmen and the department. The Board of Finance issue was a parallel
Well,
path
between
to
the
that.
town and the department.
Right.
And Jim's name is on it, just for fairness, you put Board of Chair.
But if the board.
So I don't know how that.
Fair point, fair point.
Because it will come out, the Board of, the town meeting will say, will the townspeople, or will the, on the recommendation of the Board of Finance, will the Board of Selectmen call a town meeting to do so and so. So if they don't like some of the writing in that, they can change it. If they don't like,
No, we don't do anything with legal
You're signing
agreement.
this, or,
well,
Have you looked at how these
they wouldn't be signing it,
their
they're
proposal is.
gonna do
We could certainly remove his name off the bottom of it, that's
I
fine.
didn't realize it was.
Because we're making a change to the
No.
percentage of return, we can certainly remove his name off the bottom. And that would solve that problem. Like you said, Erica, the Board of Finance is charged with the dollar figures that are not gonna change.
So I feel like this conversation now is overly complex. We are not deciding this group is not
We're not moving
deciding
forward
whether.
anywhere.
Let me finish, please. We are not deciding whether or not we are endorsing this agreement. We need to get something legal. We need to get something that we can present to the town. We need to get the language from the Board of Finance as to
Funding.
what line item and what funding, because we're making a call to the town to make a vote. We are not deciding, the three of us, whether or not this is moving forward. We just need to finalize something that is going to be proposed to the town to vote upon. So this needs to be legally accurate and reflect our best intentions. You need to give us some line items, and then we need to call a town meeting and let the town of Willington decide. That's what needs to happen.
And
This is not the Board of Finance. This is between us and the fire department.
It can be,
Propose-
currently it's between all three, so we can change
But
that.
they wrote that without
And
really
again,
thinking
we'll remove
necessarily
that.
about.
We'll remove
so
that. You
we
can have
can
your
delete.
attorney remove it.
So,
I'm just trying to simplify the conversation and figure out what's our moving
Right.
forward point.
and I think it's important to
And I
say that
think
we are
it's
going to
getting that
vote
accurate.
as to whether or not to send to town meeting.
We are gonna vote as to whether or not to send it to town meeting, yes. And then the town is going to decide whether or not it's gonna get funded. So,
It's based on whether the Board of Finance has reviewed it and we can afford it.
That is correct.
That's our.
If the Board of Finance doesn't appropriate any money, we don't move forward anywhere.
yes, and so I think we asked that question quite a while ago.
And that's why we always come back to you and always say, are you done with your analysis from the legal end? Because we don't know anything about that, we don't care about it. We only care about what can the town afford.
So I think the answer is yes, in terms of what the dollar amount is. That's been finalized for a while.
We know that dollars what they want, we have to figure out whether we can afford it.
So
that's
do
your
that.
job.
Yeah, that's our job.
Because
We're
still,
gonna
we
do
haven't said, yes, we want this to move
We will
forward. That
still do
hasn't
that.
been voted on, but you know what they're asking for, so you could determine whether or not.
Yeah, we
the
have
town
all
can
the, we have all the
afford
inputs, we have everything we need, just wait
Okay.
for our
Yes,
business manager to come back.
because then we can put out a call,
That's
and then we
right.
have something concrete for the townspeople to vote upon, and that is all we need to decide,
it. Yes, ma'am.
right?
Steph Summers, 4Y Road. I just want to remind everyone here that this is, whether they're a 501c3 or not, this, the Willington Hill Fire Department is nonprofit. So as far as talking about taxable land, and as far as talking about, frankly, return on investment, but that ship's already sailed. I think it's
out of context somewhat in what we're talking about, because we're talking about a group that gives of itself and has for almost 70 years, contributing its labor and its time and not getting a dime back for it. That this is not like you're doing a deal with a private entity that should be taxed in the future or should somehow have, I mean, there's got to be some good faith here. We're talking about 50,000. We just had a single person come in and talk about water on his property that could be almost that much to fix. And we're talking about fire service and emergency services. I don't know about you, but everyone I know in this town, to one degree or another, has had an experience, a positive experience with Willington Hill. And I think we gotta look at the context of 50 grand and what they've already accomplished in putting money together for a key property in town. Their intent, which is to improve fire services for the town. And go from there and let the voters have this question in front of them after all these months. And I just want to, I know everyone's trying to do their due diligence, but I feel like we're taking our eye off the ball to a degree. And I hope it's well intentioned.
I think so the next step is to get you to.
So all I'm gonna do is take any new language we shared tonight to the town attorney, because he has the agreements with what we want in the first place. And I don't think we said anything different tonight, but I'll share that with him and have a counter offer to you. You share it with your attorney, make it back to us, and we'll see where we go. Okay. Anything else, Selectman?
Yeah, there's 2 more agenda items.
Have the emergency vehicle preemption system.
Okay, you remember that Dick Palmer came to us before with the changes that are being made to the light at 74 and 32, and they have the ability to put in this preemption system equipment. If they do so, the town would then own it, be responsible for any maintenance. They finally got an agreement to us, and this is said agreement. You all wanted to look at the agreement. Is it in your packet? That's it. It's not. That's it.
Is it? Okay.
That is it. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at it.
Oh, no, I saw that.
It's a nice DOT. So this was, excuse me, the agreement that says we're responsible for ownership and maintenance. Activation will be by devices permanently affixed to the apparatus only, which must be the property of the town. Installation will not be permitted on personal or non-town-owned vehicles. The devices shall be wired to automatically terminate transmission of calls when the vehicle arrives at the location of the emergency. A parking brake switch or similar positive method is acceptable. Any work performed by the state in that, so if we need to work on the maintenance of it, we require an encroachment permit. And by signing this, we agree, so.
This is just on Route 32 and 74.
Correct.
Do we have anything up here?
No, I can speak on that too. I've had conversations with DOT for years about that, and in the earlier years, up to about 10 years ago, they said, well, you have to pay for us to retrofit the entire light up at the town green to make this work. So it was like, $80,000 or something like that, and then we could start buying the pieces to go on the fire trucks. So we opted out at the time, but then roughly 10 years ago, the light was reworked. They put in a control system that is capable of using this equipment. But of course, they didn't actually put the widget in the box.
Right.
And they are still perfectly happy to have us pay for putting the widget in the box.
And then maintain it and then put it on the
And then
computer.
maintain it and get an encroachment permit and all that other stuff. So we have not, we did pursue it many years ago through the town, and at the time it wasn't funded, probably 15 years ago or more, probably when it was the $80,000 option. So we would definitely at some point like to add it. As a matter of fact, we talked about the general idea that if we got funding to build a fire station, we would include it in the project.
And I don't know what the cost is because they're paying to install it because they're doing work there, so it's not costing the town
Maybe if we wait
anything.
long enough, they'll put the
It's-
widget in for us.
I will say that the preemption, just so you know, it's stated in this agreement, and I don't remember Dick mentioning this before, it's only 3 of the 4 ways that sound right, Stuart?
It's at our request, but traffic coming from the west.
Only 74 westbound, it's 32 north and southbound and 74 westbound, so
So it only,
actually challenge, that's only going up the hill.
right, and it would only affect primarily Tallinn coming in from mutual aid, which
Okay.
doesn't happen all that often to that location.
So, and if they have them. So if you agree with this, I can sign this, if you want to look over it further.
Make a
You know that
motion that
was-
the first selectman be authorized to sign the agreement with Department of Transportation for state project number 0172-04701.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Is there not a reason to, is there a good reason not to put the 4th way?
No,
So that it's all forward.
The opposite, when Dunkin' Donuts was built, the state required them to extend the island quite a bit ways down the road compared to what it used to be. Previously, we could come up to the light and sneak to the left and kind of get away with it. Now the island's so long, we can't do that. So we're stuck behind everybody now, and even if you're blowing lights and sirens, what are you going to push them out into the middle of 74 to be able to go by? The preemption system will allow that light to change as we arrive
The
at it.
preemption is 74 westbound, but not 74
Right,
eastbound.
that's my question.
So it's coming down, my guess was because it was coming down the hill.
32 south is the one we're most concerned with
But
because.
that is, so it is 70,
Right.
it's 32 north and south,
Yep.
and only 74 westbound.
So I'm trying to explain why it's important to have.
She's asking
No, I'm
why,
asking
is there a
why
reason
we
why
don't
the
have.
Yeah,
4th
so
place
that,
isn't?
it's the opposite, it's important to have, there's no reason that I would see at this time to say not to get it.
Okay, so is there a reason why it's not on the list?
I don't,
Can you?
Why not 4 sides, Stuart?
I was
That's the
gonna say,
question.
Oh, you just the 4 side? Because the mutual aid is delayed probably 10, 15 minutes, and it rarely comes from that direction.
it really comes,
And,
is the
Will-
westbound down the
right,
hill
Willington-
from you to?
yeah, Willington Hill would be affected because they're coming
We're
down.
good.
Yeah.
We're good.
But you wouldn't get a preemption.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
That's
westbound
west.
and directionally challenged.
That's
So eastbound
Me too.
is from the Dollar General up to here.
Yes.
Okay.
That
And we
Dollar
don't
General
have
doesn't
any-
need it.
And we don't have any facilities in that direction, so it makes sense not to do a preemption that way. Thank you.
There you go.
For those not directionally challenged.
No,
I tried my hardest to already know that that was westbound, I was wrong. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
that's
All right.
fine.
Did we vote on that? Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. We added item C to discuss the water. I have nothing in front of me at this point. I can tell you that the last conversation I had was to have a meeting with DPH. Mr. McCoo has written a letter to DPH. He has written to Eastern Highlands Health District. No one has told him what we have said is not correct. They haven't come right out and said. I did have an understanding that there was going to be a letter from DPH to Mr. McCoo. We were waiting to see what that said. I haven't received that yet. They did ask for a meeting. They did then cancel the meeting, and we're working on setting up a new meeting between everyone's vacations. That no meeting date has been set. I said when we made this motion in January that we had to have a process in place. We do not have a process in which to just connect any resident to a water system, and I still believe we are correct in saying we, the town, can decide if resident can connect to the town's water source. I did have questions as to whether or not Pura were to get involved. I've said that to you. Pura has weighed in and said, nope, we don't have any say. We are not beholden to them on our water system. So I disagree that the agreement he sent us from Connecticut Water is an agreement that is in the best interest of the town of Willington and any potential connection. And That is for an already set up water system. We are a water company. We are not a water company. We are not currently set to be a water company. And I did say we would have to have an agreement and we would have to have procedures, and those can take time. We didn't say when he could connect. Well,
We said, yeah, we didn't say when, but you know, we made the motion, or I made the motion, because he was caught between one of those catch-22 situations where the health department said, you can't drill a well. What's that called? You can't drill a well because you're within so many feet of a water line. So he comes to the town, and the town says, you can't tap into our water line, you gotta drill a well. Now, if any of you have ever been involved with that kind of a governmental, you know how it goes.
So that's an old conversation,
Right,
though, because we have updated it since then
Right,
and
and we-
determined that he could, if he
he can
filed
still
the
have a
right
well.
proper paperwork, could have drilled the well.
I've heard from DPH as early as 2 weeks ago he could drill a well.
Right. And,
Okay, now,
John, please, I would really love to finish my
okay,
statement.
if this is how I remember, maybe I remember wrong, I don't know. So anyway,
Or not.
he was told that he had applied to the DPH and they had rejected it. And then sometime later, they had sent an email to Stavens saying he could drill the well, but Stavens either never saw the email or never communicated it to him. So he was still trying to tap into the water line here. And he came to us in December, and you were going to connect with the town attorney and see what he could do. And we came to our meeting, he came to another meeting in January, and you said he could do either one. He could tap into the water or he could drill the well. But I said, well, then in that case, let's have him do something. And I made a motion that he be allowed to tap into the line, and it was voted on. So now he's ready to tap into the line, but now something has to be done. And he had sent us a thing just a few days after. I think our meeting was January 5th. January 9th, he sent us a thing saying how he feels he's capable of tapping into the water line. And we went into May, and I never heard anything further about it until he came in and said, what's going on? And all of a sudden, I was the only one who had apparently seen this, although everybody had it in their files somewhere, but this was his thing. So he had done everything that he had been supposed to do up to this point. And now in May he comes here. And now in May we say, okay, let's do it. And you come up with, well, but before we do, we have to make sure that this is all legal. And I want to check with the assessor to see if this is all legal.
Did you not task me, John, with coming up with a procedure to make this happen?
Yes.
Okay, and that is what I was doing, and that is what I am still doing. So I have to, what you're saying to me is you want me to make it happen today, whether all of the accurate pieces are in place or not, and whether there's no risk to the town, and whether we're doing it legally or not.
I want to know what the assessor has to do with whether the man can drill a well or not.
Because the property card is so outdated that there are pieces of property listed on the property card that clearly do not exist on the property. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't look at.
Okay, so, well, that was what was discussed.
That's what I was
That the
tasked
property
with.
card said that there was, like a mobile home on the property. That clearly does not exist on the property.
So we haven't
So the
heard
question
any-
is,
So we haven't heard any, what I'm saying is it's taken 7 months and we're still at step 1.
well, not exactly, because the other piece of this is, there was information that came in the interim
Correct.
to the town of Willington that we did not have prior. And there were no applications filed to make this happen. So it's not like he was ready to go and had the drill, or if he did, he was ready to do it without the proper
If you did, we didn't know.
approvals.
What I
But
did,
nobody ever came and filed a permit, nobody ever
Then can
came.
I suggest, seeing as how we have this all going on, that it would be a lot easier if you called him and you two got together and worked it out, where he didn't have to come before us, and we have to try to figure out what to do.
I sent him a communication so that he didn't move forward in a process we weren't ready to move forward in. And that resulted in him coming here, not liking that we stopped it, and threatening the next day to sue the town.
Right.
That's what transpired.
Right.
So not knowing if he had things in place, we are unaware of them. He has not come back to the town. So I tried to mitigate any of that by sending a communication to him. And his response, instead of having a communication back, was to threaten to sue the town the next day.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
I didn't blame him. I expected he would.
I don't know, so you think I should call him and have a communication, but he could just sue us if he doesn't like what my communication is?
If you had communicated with him, you might have worked something out, and then he wouldn't be talking about suing us.
I'm not, at this point, I'm not so sure that anything we say except, here's the line, tap into it tomorrow.
Well, at this point, yeah, you're right.
And my argument is still that the town decides who can, and we have to be prepared for more people too, and we need a plan in place. And we are not Connecticut Water, and we are not prepared to do that when we made that motion. I believe when we started this discussion, Liza's original question to us was, do we have the ability to make this call? And I think we can see now that it's much more complicated than saying, go ahead and connect to something.
Maybe.
And in the interim, we've had people come in and with
what-
displeasure about the decision that we made because of the potential ramifications on them, should anything happen with the water line because of the hookup, that it's then a town problem that we all have to pay for to fix. So
Did anything happen to what water lines?
The water line, anything that happens to the water line, it's a town water line. All of the residents of the town would be responsible for funding any purchase, just like the funding for the fire department or the funding for the correction to the water Mr. Kowalczyk has on his property. That all comes from taxpayer dollars, as does the water line.
and that was part of the request to make sure that we knew what was on the property, so that, and that's why the assessor was gonna look at the property and make sure we knew what we were actually getting into, because the property card was clearly wrong. So, yeah, so that was part of the decision to pause
That sounds
until
to
we
me too
knew.
much like just delaying.
Well,
Like a delaying tactic.
and we had the conversation at the beginning that he could have, that
He can still
Stevens
do
Brothers applied for a well permit. Stevens Brothers applied for a well permit.
Right.
They were then given information in how to go about that because of the fact that there was a water line here. They did not open it, they did not communicate that with their client. We did not delay that, the state did not delay that. I told you I signed on September, the original signature I signed was on September the 7th. It had been sent to Stevens Brothers on August 28th. I signed the town's purchase, the town's portion saying he could have an exemption and be able to put in a second well. That was almost a year ago. He didn't agree with that, and that's when he came back to us in January. Again, days before that meeting, I signed another exception that was then signed by all the others, including Joel Stevens, who applied for the well permit on that piece of property. He has not been denied a second source of water. I think it's important to note that he's not without water at this point. He's looking for a second source of water. If he taps into our line, he cannot use it as a second source of water.
If I could throw out another option that was done in South Wellington, that the water main that comes from Tolland and eventually ends up at Hall School is paid primarily from a state grant and a good chunk of town money. I believe over $100,000 was into that. When they were all done with the project and they had the school hooked up, they satisfied the needs for the grant, they signed, the town of Wellington gave the water system to Connecticut Water Company. Connecticut Water is now responsible for the water main. They were responsible for hooking customers up, and almost every house along that line, including Lion Manor, the firehouse, and almost everybody else, is tied into that. And they take care of billing and collecting the money. If you're not interested in keeping this as an asset, other than supplying water to senior housing area and town hall and perhaps the fire department, give the thing Connecticut Water, let it be their headache. It's certainly not a revenue generator.
It's not. It's
You know,
absolutely not.
we have the meter in South Wellington, we pay roughly $30 a month. Is that $30 a month worth your headache of having to manage this entire thing? Why not give it away and let Connecticut Water take care of it?
And part of Mr., thank you, that's true. Part of Mr. McCoo's argument was that we should be making money off of it, but that comes with other, there's an outlay of costs in order to potentially bring in revenue. That's we're a long point from that. So our other option is, what do we want to do with the water line? If he wants to tap into it and we don't feel we're adequately prepared to service a public, a true, what he sees as a public water supply, then we could sell that. Then they would be beholden to Pura.
Didn't you guys talk about at the last meeting or the 2 meetings ago that supplying water to private residents changes the game as far as
Well, that was some of our
the taxes or the
Well, that was
costs?
some of our concern, and that it had been suggested to us that we needed to investigate that. Again, that we would then be beholden to Pura, and that's a whole different road. And they have since said no. But what we don't have still is all of the mechanisms in place to be a water company. It's not to say we can't get there, but it's not just, right now it's one resident, but we have to have plans in place that it be more than one resident. And the cost could be great to the townspeople for 1 or 2 residents.
The question here is, does the gentleman have a right to have a source of water here? If he wants it and he's willing to pay for it, which he is. And I say yes, he does, and there's 2 options for him. And each option is telling him, oh, you go see the other guy.
Again, that is old news, John.
Right.
We have cleared that up, that he has the permission, if he wants to pursue it, to go
He has
drill
the
a well.
permission to drill a well.
Okay.
And if that's
And we
the
have
case,
tried to communicate
Have you
that multiple times.
communicated that?
In this
the department,
forum.
I signed for the town of Willington, which he was then made aware of. Joel Stevens, who again pulled a well permit on behalf of his client, Mr. McCoo, signed it also. Eastern Highlands Health District signed it, and it went to Department of Health. It's them to say, yes, he can then drill a well. He could drill a well, and we're done with this.
Fine.
He doesn't, the
And he
last.
said on the record that he didn't want to
He
because
doesn't
he
want
wanted
that.
to do.
He wants.
I don't recall him saying.
I go back to the
very
January
clearly
meeting
recall him
where we
saying that.
voted.
I'll go
And
back in the minutes, but I don't
Please do.
recall.
That meeting was January 7th. On January 4th, I signed again, a second time for the town of Willington to allow for the exception.
Okay, and which
After
you
Mr.
brought up
Stevens.
that night, but you know, somehow, it had been 3 days earlier, did he know about that? He didn't seem to know about it the night he was here.
We've tried to explain it multiple times, and I think in this
Saying it to him and knowing
forum-
that he knows about it are 2 different
Yeah,
things. So
we-
I don't know the answer to whether he knew about it or not.
I think it's been too long, and
Well,
I think he
and part
needs
of
to
it
have
was his own
something.
doing, because he could have drilled his well like 3 times over by now if he wanted to do that. But he did say on the record here, and we can go back, we have these recordings, we can go back and watch him say on the record, that he was choosing to connect to the town water supply because everybody told him that was just better.
And that if we did not allow, he would sue the town. In which
So-
we have the right to determine. I was told multiple times that, and again, very recently by DPH, that there are only 2 ways with our particular water line that we have to allow someone to tap in. If they have a hardship, and the hardship is if they did not have access to water, they had a contaminated well, or if we were in an exclusive area where you had to connect to the water system. We fall into neither of those. His property falls into neither of those categories.
Okay, and we didn't hear that until January 4th.
Yes, we did.
I don't believe we did again. I have to go
Again,
watch
we
that-
have these recordings,
watch that
so you
whole-
can go spend an hour and a half and listen to it.
Anyway.
I'd show you my note that I
Quite
was
certain.
prepared to discuss this topic tonight. We are moving in a forward direction. I don't know that it will work for him. I'm not sure what stance he plans to take from here forward, but I am still doing the task with which I was given.
Anyway, are we ready for a
It's up to you.
Good and
You-
welfare?
you-
Sounds great.
Good and, oh, I guess they do have some, Robin did put some good and welfare. Here's one good and welfare, we let Robin take a vacation. We received information, did I read this? No, I guess not. Our June 2019 Troop C call log, they responded to 466 calls in Willington, 9 accidents, 10 criminal investigations, 1 burglary, 1 larceny, 446 non-reportable matters. In addition, motor vehicle enforcement was 1 DUI, 163 traffic citations, and 40 written warnings. I packed up, forgetting about good and welfare. The public hearing that was held on July 9th and town meeting resulted in a favorable vote for the new phone system purchase that was in CIP. So we're moving forward and hopefully have new phones here by middle of August. We're waiting now, I believe the equipment's all ordered. We're waiting for the PRI to be built. What it is. I'm happy to say we are fully staffed as we've recently hired an assistant revenue collector, so welcome Michelle Sear. And the tax bills, I don't know how much good and welfare this is. Tax bills are due by August 1st without a late fee. After that, they'll enter a late fee, so that office is very busy. No one forget that.
What happened with the tax collector this time?
What do you mean?
One envelope for all 5
Okay,
tax bills?
So I'll explain it to you. So we had a new
When
tax.
last year,
no,
it was all in one?
It's always been that way, and that is we receive the bills from QDS, and our tax department sits and hand stuffs them, puts everything together. At the time, we didn't have an assistant tax collector, and our tax collector was fairly new. She had some favorable budget funds in her budget, so we then paid QDS to do the stuffing for us. They were supposed to put some of them together. That didn't happen. So that's why people got multiple tax bills. So you got the same amount of tax bills, it just came in multiple envelopes. So we didn't.
With multiple first-class postage, too.
Yes. So it was by design to help that process with short staff and someone who was still new to the office at the time. So to say we weren't disappointed with QDS was an understatement. But they did get them in a very timely fashion. And I put all the bulky permits in.
I'll be here August 1st.
We'll be here August 1st. The people were here July 1st or August 1st, that's about what it is. So, yes, pay those tax bills. And our new IT software company has begun. And so far, we're having a positive experience.
They updated my email.
They updated your email, they are diligently working. It's not without finding some issues, which Phil and I were prepared for. We knew that with our old company, but so far, so good, things are moving forward. So if you have any issues, please let me know. That your email should be working. I don't get posted on that. So it is, are you getting?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's working.
Okay. So if you send to Elboritz now, Liza actually gets it. All right, with that, I move to adjourn at 9:29.